Hogwarts. Big Boss in the Harry Potter world. Chapter 81. I don't think there is any need for any intersection between us, Mr. Dumbledore. Evans said, neither humble nor overbearing. There is really no need for any intersection between Evans and Dumbledore. Dumbledore is his headmaster, and Evans does his job honestly. Due to the relationship of the Presbyterian Church, Hogwarts will definitely not be able to escape the surveillance of the Presbyterian Church. But no matter is the headmaster of Hogwarts or is a famous wizard, no one would like to have someone else's spy under their noses. No one can guarantee whether the Presbyterian Council will take any action against Hogwarts in the future. Rather than get rid of Evans, who has been exposed, and then the Council of Elders will send another difficult wizard to Hogwarts, it is better to maintain the status quo. Evans has been exposed anyway. As for courting, Dumbledore never thought about it. Evans is a member of the Presbyterian Church. Even if he agrees, do you dare? Even if you ask, can Evans help fight Voldemort? As long as Evans does anything that has nothing to do with his current status, he will be noticed. So Dumbledore wouldn't even think about wooing him. As long as Evans behaved at Hogwarts, Dumbledore would not bother him. The double-story classroom he was living in now, if Dumbledore hadn't acquiesced, where would he have lived? Therefore, Dumbledore had already prepared for Evans' indifferent reaction. After all, it is best for the two of them to keep a distance and not interfere with each other. Spend time with Vince. Let me deal with the Philosopher's Stone first, and then find a time to talk about it. Compared to Evans, Solemn deserves Dumbledore's attention. In the past, Dumbledore only guessed that Voldemort might have made a Horcrux, but he has been struggling with there is no real evidence to prove this, but Solemn gave Dumbledore a big gift after Christmas, and he temporarily gave the Resurrection Stone to Dumbledore, which clearly proved that Voldemort really made Horcruxes. But how did Solemn know that the Resurrection Stone is a Horcrux? What is his purpose in moving Voldemort's Horcrux? You must know that a wizard with a background like Solemn, as long as he is not clearly against Voldemort, Voldemort will not pay attention there. Moving Voldemort's Horcrux meant walking to the opposite side of Voldemort. Voldemort can't affect families like Selwyn at all. What is the reason for Solemn and Elrond to do this? What motives do they have? If they are just curious about Horcruxes, they can study them by themselves. If the Resurrection Stone is interested, it will be hidden and will not be known to others. But they gave things to themselves temporarily. Does that mean that they want to get something from themselves? Dumbledore doesn't have any property, so what is the purpose of their courtship to him? Since the last time he met Solemn, Dumbledore has been guessing why Solemn gave him the Resurrection Stone. First of all, it is definitely not the Elder Council who can't see Voldemort anymore and wants to kill him. Even if the Elder Council wants to solve Voldemort by their own hands, they will not let a little wizard come in contact with him. Secondly, Solemn has a strong sense of justice and wants to remove the scourge of Voldemort from the wizarding world, but Dumbledore's investigation and observation of Solemn have shown that he does not have such a will. After much deliberation, Dumbledore can only guess that Solemn or Elrond needs something from him, so what things or information do they need? A family like Selwyn must have more resources and information than Dumbledore himself, and what Dumbledore has and what they don't have is the Elder Wand. Dumbledore himself knew that it was no secret that he had the Elder Wand. After the duel with Grindelwald, the Elder Wand had been in Dumbledore's hands. This was something that many people knew. And in view of the fact that these two people have been searching for holy artifacts, this news cannot be concealed. Some people in the wizarding world believe in the legend of the Deathly Hallows. Wizards who believe in the Deathly Hallows are called saints. Of course, Dumbledore and Grindelwald are also considered members of the saints. During the communication, of course some information will be leaked out. Besides, I can't hide from people like Selwyn that I have the Philosopher's Stone here, and I'm getting older. Did they want to take away the Elder Wand after I die? The price is to help get rid of Voldemort himself. Dumbledore thought it necessary to have a good talk with Solemn, an honest talk. Seeing Dumbledore contemplating, Evans said, since the work here is over, I should go back and write that report. But Mr. Dumbledore, if you can, please take care of these ignorant things, little guy, let them stop causing trouble. For the Gryffindor students, Evans has a lot of resentment. Nearly a quarter of his extra work is caused by these Gryffindor students. For this, Evans Adams has a lot of opinions. Taking this opportunity, Evans hoped that the headmaster, Dumbledore, could restrain them more or less and make them behave. Hearing Evans' words, Dumbledore smiled. We shouldn't deprive them of the fun of their school days, which will be a precious treasure in their lives. Evans twitched the corners of his mouth, expressing his disdain. If you don't care about it, just say it directly. Do you think I'm stupid if you still do this with me? With a wave of his hand, Evans just left the two of them here, and left first. Watching Evans disappear from sight, Dumbledore turned to look at Solemn. Can you tell me what you think, Solemn? Thoughts. Thoughts on the Philosopher's Stone. Thoughts on Quirrell. Thoughts on Voldemort. Thoughts on Harry Potter. Thoughts on the whole thing. Solemn asked back. Dumbledore heard Solemn's words, and said to Solemn. You know. You are different from almost all the little wizards I have ever met, and you remind me of someone. Voldemort. Solemn said exactly what Dumbledore was thinking. Voldemort taught Dumbledore too many lessons. When he clearly had the opportunity, he sat and watched Voldemort grow. After he was out of Dumbledore's control, it was too late to restrict Voldemort. It can be said that Dumbledore is responsible for a large part of what Voldemort did in the wizarding world. But this is not the reason for his cranky thinking. Yes, Voldemort. Dumbledore looked at Solemn, but I know that you are different from him, but there are always similarities between outstanding people. I am not surprised that you can see the problem with Quirrell, but you have any thoughts about Quirrell either. Solemn knew that Quirrell was at Voldemort's mercy, but he didn't want to. He resisted, but apparently failed. What he did on the court reminded the professors that someone wanted to harm Harry, on the one hand, and more on the hope that the professors would notice his Wong Li's mistakes and save himself from Voldemort's hands come out. But people who know there's a problem with Quirrell don't care, and people who care don't know there's a problem with Quirrell. Like Dumbledore and Solemn, they knew Quirrell wasn't willing, he was just coerced by Voldemort. Voldemort was attached to him, and sometimes he had no choice. But these two people pretended not to see Quirrell's problem, ignored it, and ignored his life or death. Indecent people like Professor McGonagall, Harry, and Hermione, when they knew about Quirrell's problems, would have figured out a way to get him out of Voldemort's clutches. There are consequences to everything you do. Can Quirrell be saved? After drinking unicorn blood, he is basically not saved. Basically, it is impossible to save, that is to say, if you really want to save, you can still save, but the price is too high. And even if Quirrell is saved, how long can he survive after being physically and spiritually injured? It's better to act as if he doesn't know anything and let things develop step by step, so as to avoid unnecessary complications. That's what Dumbledore and Solemn thought. Is Dumbledore a good man? In order to get rid of Voldemort, he even sacrificed himself. From the point of view of the wizarding world, he was willing to die so that the wizarding world of England could be freed from the terrifying shadow of Voldemort. In this way, Dumbledore is not only a good man, he can even be said to be a great man. Why was Harry's mother, Lily Evans, able to keep Harry from Voldemort in his heyday? What did she do? It was the blood curse, or blood curse for short. This magic is not an ordinary spell, you can use it whenever you want, it has strict requirements on the conditions of use and casting time. It's too late to use it when the danger is in front of you. You can only have enough time to cast this magic before the danger comes. Solemn knew very well why Voldemort would kill Harry. Because of Professor Trelawney's prophecy, when Snape was a Death Eater loyal to Voldemort, he overheard the prophecy and told his master. It was Dumbledore's brother, Aberforth, who kicked him out. Would the Dumbledore gang not know about the prophecy that Snape overheard? Would he, Dumbledore, a great wizard, be unable to stop Snape? Solemn thought it was all the result of Dumbledore's deliberate indulgence. Otherwise, the night Trelawney made the prophecy, Snape would never have escaped from Dumbledore, and Voldemort would have never known that there was a prophecy about him. What kind of role Dumbledore played in the tragedy of the Potter family? Although Solemn has some guesses about this, but there is no evidence, and even if there is evidence to prove that Dumbledore played a disgraceful role in the tragedy of the Potter family, what could he do? Besides, it was none of his business whether the Potters died or not. Solemn has always believed that Voldemort's death is an inevitable result, and the tragedy of the Potter family only accelerated the time of Voldemort's demise, but the sacrifice of the Potter family is not meaningless. At least it gave the wizards of the Kingdom of Ying the respite of the world for more than 10 years, also allowed the ordinary wizard Kong, who had been oppressed by Voldemort and his henchmen for a long time, to live a peaceful time for more than 10 years. As for Quirrell, it is even more telling. Of course Dumbledore knew that Quirrell was a problem, but what did he do when Quirrell deliberately attacked Harry on the field? The headmaster of Hogwarts did nothing. Quirrell was also a student of Hogwarts, that is, Dumbledore is a student. He watched his former student being possessed by someone and walking towards death step by step, but he watched coldly. Is Dumbledore capable of saving Quirrell? Is he capable of driving away Voldemort who is possessing him? These questions are not clear to Solemn, but what Solemn knows is that even if it can be done, the price CFBF will be huge. One of the reasons why Dumbledore used the Sorcerer's Stone to set up this trap for Voldemort was to understand Voldemort's current specific state. The other one was to see clearly how Harry Potter would make choices when his life was at stake. The more critical the situation was, the more clearly he could see a person's character. Training Harry was actually secondary. Harry Potter is the savior, and wizards all believe that he will finally defeat Voldemort and end the long-term darkness of the wizarding world in the UK. But does Harry Potter himself have the qualifications? Does he have the qualities to carry the hopes of wizards? Like this time, under the threat of Voldemort, will Harry kneel and surrender like a coward? Or will he rise up and fight like a fighter? Dumbledore wanted to see Harry's choice in this situation. As long as Harry is not a coward, Dumbledore will naturally have a way to use Harry as a banner to gather people's hearts to resist Voldemort, who is preparing to make a comeback. For this purpose, he doesn't care if Quirrell lives or dies. He watched his former student die, and did not tell everyone about Quirrell's rebellion against Voldemort. Is this something a good person would do? Solemn was not as childish as Harry. He will not insist on distinguishing between good and bad for a person. People are very complicated animals. Like Dumbledore, he's definitely a good guy from a standpoint against Voldemort. But looking at Quirrell's matter, he watched Quirrell helplessly step by step towards death, and Dumbledore seemed to be a ruthless person who didn't care about other people's lives as long as he could achieve his own goals. Pure goodness and pure evil do not exist in the creature, man, who is a contradictory creature. There is both a good side and an evil side, and chaos is the essence of human beings. A villain who does all kinds of evil and likes to take other people's pain as his own pleasure is certainly disgusting, but will an extremely upright and extremely responsible person also make people around him unhappy? Humans have shortcomings. When you have a person around you who keeps pointing out your shortcomings and urging you to correct your shortcomings, will it make people feel bored and want people to stay away from this kind of person? Solemn didn't think much of Dumbledore for Quirrell's reluctance to save him. He is not a radical Gryffindor, and Quirrell's matter has nothing to do with Solemn, and he doesn't care about Quirrell's life or death at all. Although Solemn knew what choice Harry would make when he met Voldemort for the first time, Dumbledore didn't know. He needed to see Harry's choice clearly, he needed to see Harry's character clearly. Because Harry would play a vital role in Dumbledore's plans. Well, let's put aside those temptations and start a real conversation, Professor. Solemn, did you know that when you handed me the gaunt ring? For the time being. It is, for the time being, Professor, there is a big difference in this. Solemn reminded Dumbledore, watch your words. Well, it's temporary. When you handed it over to me, I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about you, or your grandpa. What is your purpose? What do you want from me? Now there are only two of us here. Can you answer my question? I think what you want is definitely not the tears of my poor fox. Solemn wasn't surprised that Dumbledore would doubt the purpose of giving him the Resurrection Stone, because anyone would doubt it. Such a precious thing is for fear that others will miss it. Fortunately, the two of you have offered to give it to others, although it is only temporarily. Professor. Solemn thought for a moment, and thought it would be better to open up the words. After all, there were some questions Solemn would have to ask Dumbledore for advice sooner or later. In your early years, you and that one searched for the whereabouts of the Deathly Hallows, and you did find them. You must be familiar with them, right? Was it really for the Elder Wand? Dumbledore thought about it. Early years, well, Dumbledore chuckled, Solemn, you know, people have their youth, and young people, all passionate and whimsical. Geller and Ite wanted power back then, though now it seems like a tacky pursuit. Having said that, Dumbledore took out his Elder Wand. This was the first time Solemn had seen the Elder Wand in person, with a 15-inch shaft, the longest for a wand. Because most wands are between 10 inches and 13 inches. In front of this legendary wand, Solemn was also attracted to look at this famous Wand of Destiny, seriously. People say that the master of the Elder Wand is invincible. But what? Dumbledore sighed. Which of his masters will end well? It's a very powerful wand indeed, very powerful, I can say for sure. But it's not necessarily stronger than your wand. Dumbledore glanced at the ring on Solemn's right hand. Just kidding, headmaster. Solemn retorted, I don't deny that Mr. Ollivander is an excellent wandmaker. However, I don't think even the dragon wand he made would be stronger than the Elder Wand. I mean your other wand, Mr. Selwyn. Dumbledore smiled, pointing at Solemn's right hand. To be honest, Solemn was still surprised when Dumbledore said those words. The ring on his right hand is a magic wand only he and his grandpa know, not even Selna. And how did Dumbledore know about it? Old pure-blood families usually have ancient, powerful wands handed down, and the Selwyn family is certainly no exception. Solemn was smuggled into the wand store by Elrond after the Black Glove duel. That's where he got the wand named Bone Spur. According to family records, this wand was made from the folds of an extinct creature, the Night Devil. The middle finger of the Night Devil is the longest finger is also the most magical. The wand and the ring are one, the wand is the phalanx of the Night Devil, and the ring is made of the nails of the Night Devil, the skin of the middle finger, and other materials, which are closely linked together through alchemy. When the owner of the ring wants to use it, the wand will appear in the hand of the owner wearing the ring. Don't be surprised, Dumbledore explained, seeing Solemn's surprise, I found the ring at the beginning, but I returned it to the Selwyn family. Dumbledore's right hand was holding a wand, and he tapped the palm of his left hand. We only knew it was a wand at the time, but I've never seen its real appearance. Solemn, you can satisfy my poor old man. Curiosity. Since everyone recognized it, and if it wasn't for Dumbledore, he might not have been able to get it. Thinking of this, Solemn didn't ink any ink, and when he shook his right hand, the bone spur appeared directly in his hand. Daredevil's middle finger is unusually long, with 5 phalanxes, which means that Daredevil's middle finger has 4 knuckles, which look very similar to the protrusions on the Elder Wand. The whole body of the stick is white, and the tip of the stick is the fingertip of the Night Devil, which looks extremely sharp. 14 3/4 inches, a little shorter than your Elder Wand. Solemn's left hand lightly touched the tip of the wand. It's just made of bone, stronger than the Elder Wand. This wand isn't breaks easily. Can be used as a dagger in a pinch. Solemn held on to his hand, showing Dumbledore his wand. I can't let go, or it will go away, Solemn explained. This is also a great feature of this bone spur, this wand will not leave its owner. If hit by the disarming curse, it will just disappear. As long as your hand is held, it will appear in your hand again, continue to fight. It's a work of art. Dumbledore looked at the wand in Solemn's hand and couldn't help admiring. I think Garrick will be very excited to see this. Professor, I think you may have misunderstood. Solemn explained. Of course, it would be a lie to say that you are not interested in the Elder Wand, but I am more interested in the combination of the Deathly Hallows, and what they have the fate of the victim. Solemn looked at Dumbledore. He hoped that Dumbledore could tell something he didn't know. Solemn knew that Dumbledore and Grindelwald had investigated the Deathly Hallows. Maybe they had communicated with other saints. If it comes to death, Dumbledore must know more about the Hallows than Solemn. After listening to Solemn's words, Dumbledore thought for a long time. Solemn, may I take it that you have discovered something? Something unusual, unreasonable, but you have no clue after your own investigation, no evidence to prove your conjecture, but you think your conjecture is correct, and you want to prove it urgently. Before Solemn could speak, Dumbledore continued, let me give you a piece of advice, Mr. Selwyn. Hearing Dumbledore call himself that, Solemn knew that what Dumbledore said next would be a very serious topic. You can use the resurrection stone, it's no big deal. But don't get into any of the Hallows secrets. It's just a bait, a deception. Then you must speak clearly. Now I am more curious. Is there any connection between the Deathly Hallows? What happens when they are all in the hands of a wizard? It is said that when a wizard possesses all three Deathly Hallows, he will conquer death. Speaking of this, Dumbledore chuckled silently, as if mocking, and it is not known whether he was mocking Solemn, or laugh at your past self. This can't be wrong, right? If you merge with death, you can naturally conquer death. You mean that when a wizard owns all the Hallows, he dies? Solemn asked. It doesn't make sense. A person dies, regardless of whether he owns the Hallows or not. Under the Ministry of Magic, in the Department of Mysteries, there is a hall. They call it the Hall of Death. It used to be that the executioners were executed there, but do you know how they executed the execution? Dumbledore Solemn was asked a question. You mean the stone gate that disappears when you walk in? Solemn knew what Dumbledore was talking about, but he'd never paid attention to it. The only thing Solemn knew about the stone door was that Sirius passed through it, and then he disappeared. Nothing else is known. Glancing at Solemn, Dumbledore said, "That's right, it seems that you know a lot. The stone platform in the Hall of Death, many employees working in the Ministry of Magic don't know." Road. Solemn didn't explain. If you have seen it with your own eyes, you will know that the stone platform is incompatible with the surrounding environment, as if it was moved from somewhere, and the curtain on the stone gate is always fluttering. You can hear someone talking behind that door, but you can't hear it clearly. And you have an urge, a strong urge to go in that door to find out. But we all know that no one can come back through that door. Quote. But what does that have to do with the Deathly Hallows? Gellert and I have been in contact with many saints, and many saints speculate that if you collect all the Deathly Hallows, you can pass through the gate of death. Dumbledore said, but no one can prove it is correct. Of course, no one can prove it. Even if you collected all the Deathly Hallows, even if you invaded the Ministry of Magic, even if you invaded the Department of Mysteries, even if you stood in front of the stone platform, would you dare to go through that door? Go through that door. None of the wizards of the gate came back. Who can guarantee that he will be able to come back with the Deathly Hallows? And there's a strange thing about that door, Dumbledore added. Anything that goes in that door disappears, anything. We've been in the Hall of Death, we've tried. That's as incomprehensible stuff, so, Solemn, forget about those legends, it won't help you in your life. Okay, let's not talk about the Deathly Hallows. Solemn was a little disappointed, and calmed down. Solemn asked Dumbledore, now that we are talking about this, then, about that Horcrux, Professor, have you got rid of it? This holiday I promised Professor Snape to use it. I'm sorry, Solemn, Dumbledore shook his head, I have no way of destroying it, and I presume that if the ring is destroyed, it will most likely lose all functionality. After thinking for a while, Solemn asked, so, do you have time, Professor, after the holidays? I think I might have a way to destroy this Horcrux without destroying the ring. Dumbledore raised an eyebrow, showing interest. Part of Voldemort's soul is on that ring, so is it feasible to sacrifice this part of his soul when using the Resurrection Stone to perform the ritual of summoning the soul? I never knew that the Resurrection Stone has such a function. What I know is that it can't really resurrect the dead, but just attracts a substance that is more real than the soul and more illusory than the entity. Professor, you have to admit that the ancient family has always done a good job in the reserve of knowledge. Solemn explained, what you said is the Resurrection Stone. The weapon aspect, which plunges the user into irreversible grief and ultimately, suicide. But if used correctly, you can summon the spirit of a dead person. But the premise is that the soul is still wandering in the world and has not gone to the dead land. Sorry, Professor, I can't find any records of dead places. To really use it, you need to sacrifice your soul. The more souls you have and the stronger you are, the longer the summoning time will be. These are recorded. When the Gunter family was not completely ruined, if any wizard wished to see the dead, he would reach an agreement with the Gunter family, complete secrecy for both parties, and a large fortune for the Gunter family. Quote. I know this because the Selwyn family has recorded this kind of transaction with the Gunter family. But this way of summoning the souls of the dead requires soul sacrifices, so I think, during the holidays, it would be great if you could come. Solemn started playing tricks. When Snape really summoned Lily Evans, would Dumbledore want to meet his sister? On the second day after the exam, there was a rumor circulating among the students. The corridor on the fourth floor, which Headmaster Dumbledore pointed out not to enter when the school started, was guarded by the Sorcerer's Stone. Every professor has set up traps to protect it. But Professor Quirrell, who just came this year, wanted to steal the Sorcerer's Stone. It was Harry Potter and 3 other Gryffindor students who stopped him, and their 4 freshmen protected the Sorcerer's Stone. There was no Solemn in these rumors, no Evans, no Draco, and no Voldemort. Who spread these rumors? Harry and the others are still lying in the school hospital, and Solemn is not a big mouther. It could only be Dumbledore. He was giving Harry a boost. Dumbledore himself is a person who experienced it firsthand. When danger comes, the people will put their hopes and pins on those wizards with great strength and good reputation. Does Harry have great strength? Maybe in the future, but now he is just a little wizard who has not yet fully developed, and Dumbledore is trying to build momentum for him. Solemn and Dumbledore talked a lot about the Sorcerer's Stone at the end, among which Solemn, 880, Lim made a request. It's okay to create momentum for Harry, as long as he and Draco are not involved. It doesn't matter how many points you give to Gryffindor, okay, but don't bring the Slytherins into it. Dumbledore didn't say anything about Solemn's request. In the eyes of Solemn and Dumbledore, these are minor issues, not necessary to discuss. Dumbledore finally agreed to Solemn. As long as there is time during the holidays, he will come to Solemn and Snape. Harry was still in a coma, but Hermione and Ronald were just terrified and fine. When gossip spreads, there will always be a large group of people around the two to ask the truth. Hermione wasn't interested in these things, but Ronald was enjoying them, bragging about how they had cracked the levels set by the professors along the way, and how they had protected the Philosopher's Stone from Quirrell. But after Dumbledore's warning and Hermione's repeated emphasis, Ronald finally didn't say anything about smoking Voldemort. The final exams are over, and it's the last Quidditch match of the year. Almost all the students from the school crowded onto the pitch to watch the game, but Hermione didn't go. After the dust settled that night, Hermione lay in bed in the school hospital, going through the whole thing in her head. She figured out many things that she didn't think clearly at the time, but she also had some doubts. Since today was the last Quidditch match and there was no one in the castle, Hermione was going to ask Solemn for clarification. She knew that Solemn would never go to the game. Hermione knew where to find Solemn, and she had learned from her usual contact that Solemn basically wouldn't appear in the Slytherin common room except to sleep. He was confined to his small classroom during the day except for class time, and at night he brewed potions in a hidden room near the Slytherin common room. Hermione knew all about that. Sure enough, when Hermione came to the small classroom, Solemn, Draco and Neville were all there. Hermione, I guessed that you would come to see me as soon as you came out of the school hospital. Solemn took a cushion from the side and threw it to Hermione. You came just in time. I'm giving these 2 guys who don't have a good head explain the situation. Then let's move on. Draco, didn't you wonder last night why the professors used devil's nets, which are obviously unqualified, to protect the Philosopher's Stone? After going through the whole process, has your doubt been resolved? I do have some ideas, but... Draco hesitated, but it doesn't seem to make sense. It's okay, let's hear it. I think Hermione should have this question too. Solemn asked. Hermione nodded, but said nothing. The last mirror, obviously stopped Quirrell or, that person. Draco didn't directly say Voldemort's name this time, but last night Draco said Voldemort's name in agitated mood name. Now that he has calmed down, he naturally wouldn't say that person's name casually. After all, Voldemort's prestige is too deep. But it's the Philosopher's Stone. How can the professors believe that the mirror can block him? If the professors are sure that he can't take the Philosopher's Stone, it doesn't seem to matter whether the arrangements in front are there or not. Draco said I asked my own question, and it was also Hermione's question. The levels arranged by Professor Sprout, Professor Flitwick and Professor McGonagall are meaningless no matter how you look at them. Let alone Voldemort, ordinary adult wizards can also pass easily. Glancing at Draco and Hermione, Solemn said, you guys are thinking right. If you want to prevent Voldemort from getting the Sorcerer's Stone, a mirror of Arised is enough. But this doesn't mean that the levels arranged by these professors in front are completely free. It doesn't work. Solemn smiled, you guys forgot about Harry Potter. Draco on one side hadn't turned the corner yet, but Hermione understood what Solemn meant. You're saying those traps are actually not for Voldemort, but for Harry. Hermione said in disbelief. But why? And how did the professors know that Harry was going there? Hermione, you have to know that Harry's personality makes his actions very predictable. And haven't you thought about it? Using traps to protect an item, especially an item like the Philosopher's Stone, the power of the trap is naturally more powerful. The bigger the better, right? But look at the traps set up by the professors, how lethal are they? Those traps are not lethal, and the one by Professor Flitwick even has a broom ready for you. What do you think? The agency would do such a stupid thing. Those agencies are tailor-made for you. Harry is good at flying, Ronald is good at playing wizard chess, and I. Hermione thought about the design of those levels carefully. Well, you are right. Thinking that the efforts of myself and others were all done by others arranged, Hermione was a little frustrated. As for you asking me, professors, or why Professor Dumbledore did this, Solemn paused, that's because Professor Dumbledore wanted to know two things. Two things. Hermione and Draco said in unison, while Neville, as usual, sat aside without saying a word. One, is to confirm Voldemort's current situation and judge when he will return. Hearing Solim's words, Hermione tensed her body, Draco's face became even paler, and Neville pursed his lips. There's one more thing that Dumbledore wants to see most, Harry's choice. Harry's choice? Hermione asked puzzled. Ask yourselves, in the situation last night, when facing Voldemort, how many people could fight Voldemort as hard as Harry did in order to protect the Sorcerer's Stone? How many people would rather die than surrender in front of Voldemort? What Dumbledore wanted to know, that's it. Harry, the coward who would kneel before Voldemort, and the fighter who fought back when his life was threatened. Obviously, Professor Dumbledore is extremely satisfied with Harry's choice. But, Solemn, what's the point? Draco was still a little confused. Shaking his head, Solemn explained to Draco, you all know Harry's nickname, right? What did they call him? Savior, right. When Voldemort returns, Harry will become the banner against Voldemort. He 4.0 can unite people. You all know how scared ordinary wizards are of Voldemort and his Death Eaters. So as long as there is Harry, the person who once terminated Voldemort, the wizards will have the will and confidence to resist, so it's like this. Hermione's expression changed suddenly. She stared at Solemn and asked, then you don't want to explain why you showed up there last night? And when you showed up, I saw you were holding a bucket of popcorn in your hand. Hermione said fiercely. How should I put it? Solemn scratched his head. We went there just in case, and for that, I called Evans up. It was his job after all, and then I took Draco and Neville with me by the way, and let them see and see. That's about it. What's with the popcorn? Hermione was still relentless. Solemn leaned his neck back, looked at the ceiling, and thought, if it wasn't for the conditions, I still want to take the ice down. On the third day, Harry finally woke up. He woke up at just the right time, because today is the last day of the school year, and the school year will end when everyone finishes their dinner at night. Although I have prepared in my heart, I also know what will happen. But when Dumbledore added nearly 200 points to Gryffindor, Draco couldn't help but curse. I told you a long time ago, and you should have been mentally prepared. Solemn was dealing with a strawberry cake. They can add points, so can we. Why did you give up? Did we do anything? We just went to watch the excitement, and we didn't do anything in essence. Wiping the food crumbs from the corner of his mouth, Solemn continued, besides, what college are we in? If it's true, it doesn't matter to me if it is exposed, but your life may not be too easy in the future. Draco thought for a moment and agreed with Solemn. There are quite a few little wizards in Slytherin who worship Voldemort, and the person who really tried to steal the Sorcerer's Stone was Voldemort. This matter must not be hidden from the families of these little wizards. When they knew that Malfoy, who was also a Death Eater, was there at the time, but they didn't help Voldemort, what would they think? Did Malfoy betray his class? Did they fall to the counter-revolution headed by Dumbledore? There are still many 25 Voldemort's loyalists in the wizarding world who escaped trial. Bring some big troubles to the Malfoy family. 0. As for Draco at school, although there is a high probability that no one will do anything, it is not a problem to isolate him. By the way, if you make a little trouble in normal times, Draco's life may not be too easy. By the way, Draco, I will take time to visit your house this holiday. Oh. Then Malfoy Manor will open the door to welcome you. Draco said happily. When he returned home last time, Lucius was greatly excited by Draco's silent spellcasting. He also said to Draco, however, Solemn can be invited to visit Malfoy Manor. I think my father would be delighted to see you. When are you coming? Let's get ready. I'll let you know when the time comes. Anyway, it's this holiday, and I'll definitely go to your house. Solemn wanted to meet Lucius, which he planned long ago. That notebook was in Malfoy Manor, and Solemn's intention was to make sure that it would enter Hogwarts next semester. The next morning, the students all got up one after another to pack their things and prepare to leave by train. Solemn didn't follow the big team on the train. He came to Hogsmeade alone. He wouldn't take the 7 or 8 hour train back, and a fool would not use something as convenient as the Flow network, although it's not very comfortable, and clothes also get dirty easily. But these are all tolerable. The next second, Solemn appeared in the leaky cauldron and looked around. Solemn quickly saw the person he was looking for. After all, it was early in the morning and there was no one in the bar. Hi, my dear sister, did you come last night or this morning? Solemn sat down in front of Sil. Serna is eating her breakfast. Last night, Tom opened a room for me. I've already paid the money. Selna puffed her cheeks and said. How do you feel now? Is there anything wrong with your body? Solemn asked about his sister's physical condition. Can't you wait until I finish eating? Selna said, dissatisfied. After Solemn waited obediently for Serna to finish eating, the two returned to the room on the second floor. So, your current body has no discomfort at all, and your magic power is steadily increasing. Solemn felt relieved, as long as there is no problem. But Solemn didn't take it lightly. He thought it's better to observe to make sure nothing goes wrong. What did Grandpa prepare for you? Solemn began to ask about Serna's recent situation. Sierna's problem, Elrond, with Gilvez's help, has been solved. Now she has given up her identity as a squib and is already a little wizard. Oh, by the way, Grandpa left you a letter. As she said that, Selna began to rummage through her suitcase. Serna also has a box similar to Solim's, but the space inside is relatively small, not as big as Solim's. He took Elrond's letter and read it carefully. Oh, you don't have a wand yet? Solemn asked halfway through. Yeah, Grandpa was going to take me to the storage room to get one at the beginning. Serna pouted and said, but it was discovered by the second Grandpa who just came back, and Grandpa said to find a way later. Quote. This matter was not mentioned in Elrond's letter. Just ask Solemn to take Serna to Ollivander to buy a wand. Elrond is the same as Solemn, and he doesn't care well with his two older brothers. After all, Elrond's two older brothers, Lesutu and Breed, are great wizards, and they don't think much of their good-for-nothing younger brother. And now that he was discovered, even if Elrond wanted to force it, he would not be as strong as his second brother. Such a shameful thing, with Elrond's temperament, would definitely not be written in the letter. There are powerful wands handed down from generation to generation in the storage room of the Selwyn family, but as Ollivander said, not only the wizard chooses the wand, but the wand also chooses the wizard. Solemn tried all the wands in the storage room at the time, and only this, Bone Spur, accepted him, and none of the other wands responded to him. But Serna was a little unlucky, and didn't even have a chance to try. It's okay, Ollivander's wand is also quite good, very suitable for young wizards to use. When you grow up, there will be plenty of opportunities. At that time, I will have a custom-made one from Kujigia. Solemn comforted Silna. The little wizards of their origins knew very well that the wands handed down from ancient times were much stronger than the current wands. If they could, they would prefer to use the wands handed down from their families instead of going to the wand shop to buy that kind of high-end goods. You haven't bought anything yet. You can use mine first, anyway, I have to buy again when the next semester's book list arrives. Solemn began to pack his suitcases, taking out all the books he used last semester. I took notes on it, and I wrote down all the key points and test points that the professor said. If there is anything you don't understand, just ask me. We are going to live here for a vacation. Then, Selna hesitated a bit. What's wrong? 970. How do we sleep? Serna pointed to the only bed in the room and said, this is just one bed. Quote. Solemn rolled his eyes, didn't you put a bed in your box? Or you sleep here, and I sleep in my box. Solemn didn't really look at the bed on the leaky cauldron. To be honest, it looked a bit dirty. And the bed here is not as big as the one in Solim's box. I haven't been in your box yet. You open it, I want to go in and have a look. Serna pointed to Solim's big box. His box was one size bigger than Serna's. Solemn did not refuse his sister's request. When Solemn opened the box, the two of them walked down the stairs. Before they reached the end, Silna pointed to the big bed on the right and shouted, "It's not fair. Grandpa is too partial. Why is there's such a big bed? I don't have mine." Turning his head and looking at Solemn, he said, "I don't care. You sleep outside. I'll sleep here." Shrugging his shoulders, Solemn said to Silna indifferently, "It's up to you, you can sleep wherever you want. I will take you to Ollivander's later, we will buy your wand first and then talk about it." The two came out of the box, packed up and prepared to go out. Diagon Alley is relatively deserted now. After all, it is very early in the morning, and few people will come out to buy things at this time, and the main group of consumers in Diagon Alley, Hogwarts students, are still staying in the Hogwarts Express. It's time for the underpants on the train. Thinking of this, Solemn couldn't help but sigh with emotion. I don't know how many people have passed through these underpants. Let's go buy you a wand first. Solemn walked Silna through Diagon Alley. Should I just use my books, or buy new ones? Solemn asked Silna. After all, the textbooks used by freshmen have not changed for many years. Just use yours, I know, you don't have much money. Serna was very considerate for her brother. I still have this little money. If you don't need to buy a new book, what kind of pet do you want to give? An owl? A cat? Or something else? Solemn then added, let's talk about it first. Toad, mice or something, I won't buy it for you if you want it. After hearing Solim's words, Serna gave her brother a strange look. Toad. Mice. Do you think your sister is some kind of weird person? How do you think I'd be interested in that animal? Seeing Serna's normal pet orientation, Solemn said with relief, that's good, we're here. Ollivander's wand shop is famous not only in the UK. It is also a very well-known existence in the entire European wizarding world. The wand shop run by Ollivander is the only one in Diagon Alley and is quite famous in Europe. The shop is always full of wand boxes, founded in 382 BC. Ollivander's shop was small and shabby, with a lonely wand on a faded purple cushion in the window. The gold lettering on the door has peeled off, and it reads, Ollivander, fine wand maker since 382 BC. This is Ollivander's wand shop. Silna looked Ollivander's store up and down. It's so dilapidated, it feels like it's about to close down. Okay, let's go. Solemn pushed open the shop door. The shop was small, with nothing but a bench, and thousands of long, narrow boxes of wands stacked almost to the ceiling. There was no one behind the counter, but Solemn believed Ollivander already knew there was a customer. Ah, good morning, boys. Ollivander stood atop a tall ladder and slid out from the depths of the store. Oh, Mr. Selwyn, is that wand easy to use? I haven't met many wizards who can be selected by the Alder wand over the years. Ollivander climbed down the tall ladder and went behind the counter. This was the first time for Silna to meet this famous wand maker throughout Europe. Anyone who meets Ollivander for the first time will be attracted by his silver eyes. If I'm not mistaken, this should be Miss Selwyn. Ollivander said, taking out a tape measure and parchment from under the counter. Let's get started. Which hand do you prefer to use? Backquote. Next, Silna honestly followed Ollivander's request, measuring the length of the arm, the length of the forearm, height and head circumference. After getting these data, Ollivander left, and he threw it to Silna to choose a wand. What's the use of this? After a series of measurements just now, Silna asked Solemn, puzzled. The Ollivander family has been making wands for a long time, and they have their own way. Professional things are left to professional people. If you want to know, you might as well ask him later. Solemn, actually I'm not too sure why you need to measure this and that when choosing a wand. But he knows that it's always okay to leave things that you don't understand to people who know how to do them. Come and try this, Miss Selwyn. Ollivander walked out of the tall shelves, the body of the cypress stick, the core of the stick is. No. No Cypress 1. Mr. Ollivander, please change it, this is too unlucky. Solemn interrupted Ollivander hastily when he heard that it was cypress wood. I'm pretty sure it's definitely not for Cerna. Looking at Solemn in surprise, Ollivander said, Mr. Selwyn seems to know a lot about wands, so you should know that it is the wand that chooses wizards. Come on, Miss Selwyn, try it. Ollivander ignored Solim's words at all, and directly stuffed the cypress wand into Silna's hand. Well, it's really not very suitable, is it? Ollivander snatched the wand back again. Wait a minute. After speaking, he walked towards the shelf until his figure was blocked by the shelf. What's the matter? Brother, why are you so excited when you hear Kashiwagi? Selna asked. The cypress wand is unlucky. Solemn didn't want to explain it to Selna. Cypress wands are often associated with courage, and its owner is usually self-sacrificing. A wizard with a cypress wand usually dies an honorable death. Solemn knew very well that the piece in front of him was extremely short-lived, and it was not a good sign to get a cedar wand at such a time. Don't say that Solemn is superstitious, there are a lot of unclear things in wandology. Just like ordinary people's views on ghosts and ghosts, it is better to believe that they exist than that they do not. Soon, Ollivander was back again, but this time he was holding several wand boxes. Come on, try this first, Walnut, the tail hair of a female unicorn. Ollivander handed Silna a wand. Before Cerna could wave it, Ollivander snatched it from Cerna's hand. It's not very suitable. Although you can use it, it always feels like something is missing. Ollivander casually threw the wand into the box. Try this next, elm wood, dragon heartstring. For a lady of a pureblood family, elm would be a good fit. Although I think it's completely nonsense that elm can only be used by purebloods. When Silna waved the wand, there was a violent explosion in the room. The window facing the street in the store was already shattered, which startled two wizards who happened to pass by. Silna quickly threw the wand on the counter. Well, it's not perfect. Ollivander didn't give a about his window being broken. Mr. Ollivander, I know my sister very well. You might as well give her a wand of pine, applewood or black walnut. Of course, acacia wood should not be bad. Oh. Ollivander thought for a while. It is indeed possible to think about it, but I don't think this lady is suitable for a pine wand. Solim's face twitched. I thought to myself, aren't you my sister? Watching Ollivander disappear from the shelves once again, Silna began to question her brother. The types of wood that Solemn mentioned all have certain characteristics. The acacia wand usually denies the use of magic to anyone other than its owner, but in turn, it only shows its power to the most gifted. The owners of acacia wands are usually careful wizards. Applewood is powerful, especially suitable for those who have lofty ideals and pursuits, because applewood is not suitable for black magic. The holder of an applewood wand is said to be well loved and have a long life. Black walnut, not as common as walnut wands in general. Black walnut wands generally seek owners with keen intuition and insight. Black walnut looks beautiful but is not easy to handle. As for the pine wood, it can only be said to be Solim's best wishes for his sister. Many wandmakers believe that the owners of pine wands will live a long life, and pine wands are very sensitive to silent spells. After a while, Ollivander came back again. Mr. Selwyn's words just now reminded me that maybe the most suitable for you is pear wood. Then Ollivander handed Silna a beautiful golden pear wood wand. Pear wood, phoenix's tail feathers, 12 3/4 inches, very powerful, and at the same time it will help you not walk on detour. Quote. When Cerna held the wand, Solemn knew it was the one. The wand glowed bright golden yellow, then slowly faded. Miss Selwyn, congratulations. Ollivander said with a smile. Owners of pearwood wands are usually very popular and respected. Wand. How much? Mr. Ollivander. Solemn began to dig into his wallet. 12 galleon males. So cheap. Cerna looked at her brother in disbelief. Well, I'll tell you when I get out. Solemn quickly counted out 12 galleons, and handed them to Ollivander. By the way, Mr. Ollivander, I would like to ask. Solemn knew that the next words might make Ollivander feel uncomfortable. I have some rare materials here, can you help me make a wand? We don't accept customization here, Mr. Selwyn. Ollivander frowned, but I still want to ask, what is the rare material you are talking about? You must know that not all materials are suitable for making wands. Ghostwood and snakewood, I don't think that counts. Slytherin wands and staves are made of snakewood. It's not that Solemn didn't want to find another wandmaker. But Solemn is worried that these two precious materials will disappear if people take them, and Solemn has nothing to do with them. But Ollivander was different. He knew Dumbledore and could still be trusted, but he didn't know if he would agree. After leaving Ollivander, Solemn took Silna to buy the rest. Are you going to the Yule Owl shop or are you going to Wonder Zoo? Solemn asked Cerna. There are only owls for sale at the Isle Owl shop, which is where Harry's Hedwig bought them. And Wonder Zoo has it all. That's where Hermione's Crookshanks came from. Wonderful Zoo, Selna said. We basically don't use owls or anything like that. Wonder Zoo is a very crowded, noisy pet store full of animal noises. The store owner is a female owner wearing thick black-rimmed glasses, who sells all kinds of animals. I saw business coming early in the morning, dealing with animal excrement, and the female boss who was feeding the animals breakfast warmly greeted me. Are you here to buy a pet? What do you want? We have it all here. Let's not talk about the weird ones, let's talk about the normal ones. What do you think? Solemn looked at his sister. The ones with cats and dogs are good. Silna ignored Solim's words, she seemed to be in a daze now. Cerna. Solemn called out. Huh. Did you hear anything just now? Selna began to look around the room. Glancing at his younger sister, Solemn said to the female boss, let's pick and choose first, and we'll tell you when we're done. The female boss turned around and started busy with the things in the store. What did you hear? Just hear. I can't say, anyway, I can be sure that not only the three of us were talking here just now, but also a voice. Solemn narrowed his eyes. Listen. Cerna obviously heard that voice again. But Solemn didn't hear anything, the noise inside the shop was too loud. The sounds of various animals are so mixed that it is difficult to distinguish one specific sound. He said he was a little cold. Cierna looked back at Solemn. Animal. Cold. No way. Solemn looked at his sister, took her hand and began to walk around the store, as if he was looking for something. That's it, Cerna, listen, is it this? Solemn led Cerna to a cage. Solemn, who had been paying attention to Cerna, noticed that his sister's expression began to change. I'm a. Cerna's expression was very strange, shock, fear, excitement, all these displayed on the face at the same time, it would be really strange. That's right, it should be. Solemn was also surprised, he never thought that his sister could be a Parseltongue. I will meet snakes this year, and my sister who is just about to enter school is a Parseltongue, this is simply. Don't tell anyone about this. Solemn pulled Cerna up, but why didn't you know that you were a? Cerna gave Solemn a blank look and didn't speak. Seeing Cerna's expression, Solemn also recalled, where did the snake come from in Selwyn Castle? Naturally, Cerna's talent has never been revealed. You want this? Solemn knelt down, looking at the snake in the cage. It was a white snake with green eyes, and a small, pointed horn emerged from the snake's head. Oh, you guys really have a good eye. The female boss touched it at some point and started her sales promotion. This snake is very rare with the lineage of long-horned water snake. You can see the pointed horn on its head. Is it? It's still young. When it grows up, the horn will be useful. Both Solemn and Cerna knew exactly what the lady boss was talking about. The horns of the horned water snake can be used to make magic wands, which are expensive. Okay, that's it, Cerna, you have to treat it well. Solemn stood up, and said to the boss, this snake, plus that cat. Solemn pointed to a cage at the top of the shelf. It was a black cat with no variegated color visible. The whole body is black and shiny, and Solemn saw it when he entered the store. That black cat. The female boss rubbed her hands. Solemn noticed his boss's hesitation. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? She's very picky. It turns out that there were people who fell in love with her, but she didn't go with others at all. The female boss sighed, why don't you try it? If she is willing to go with you, I'll sell it. She doesn't want to, and you don't want to, we have other cats in the shop. Look over there, that ginger one, his name is Crookshanks, how is he? Solemn followed the direction the boss pointed and saw the ginger cat. His face looked like it had been pan-slapped, and his big, fat, fluffy tail. Sure enough, it was Crookshanks. How could Hermione fall in love with this? Solemn complained in his heart. Looking at the black cat in front of him, Solemn realized that this black cat still has different eyes, one golden and one green. Solemn reached out and touched the black cat's little paw. As a result, the black cat quickly pulled out its paw and pressed it on the back of Solemn's hand. Haha, the cat's paw is on the law. Solemn started his second year. Would you like to come with me? Lim scratched the black cat's chin, CFBH, and turned to look at the female boss. Does she have a name? You can get one for her, she seems to like you. Finally, Solemn and Serna walked out of Wonder Zoo with their pets. Luna stood on Solemn's shoulders, looking at the outside world curiously. This was the first time she saw the scene outside the shop. The name Luna was given by Serna. Her white snake is called Triss. The little white snake is now wrapped around Serna's wrist. Don't you feel that? You are paralyzed. Solemn couldn't understand his sister's behavior. Solemn glanced blankly, and Serna didn't say anything. Okay, next, let's go shopping for clothes. Solemn changed the subject. Where do you want to go? The outer clothes store. Or Madame Malkin's robe store. Most wizards would choose to go to Madame Malkin's place, mainly because of the cheapness. Of course, the quality of the robes at Madame Malkin's place is also good. But compared to the Tufan clothing store, there are not so many styles and functions. I don't know, brother, you can make up your mind. Selna usually doesn't have a chance to come to Diagon Alley, and she doesn't know much about the shops here. Feeling the weight of his purse covertly, Solemn confidently took Serna to the Tufan clothing store. I have to say that the decoration of the Tuofan clothing store looks more upscale than Madame Mojin's. After coming out, Solemn touched his purse distressedly. His galleons were almost bottomed out, and he probably had nothing left to buy the crucible and potion materials for Silna. By the way, the problem in the wand shop just now, explain to me why the wand is sold so cheap. Silna asked, those materials are more than this money. Ollivander will not always be there or you trading at a loss. After touching Luna in his arms, Solemn began to explain to Serna. Wands are a must for wizards. But the materials that can be used to make wands are very expensive, and many ordinary wizards cannot afford this price. Let's just say dragon heartstring wand. Every dragon heartstring wand is meant to kill a dragon. No matter what kind of dragon it is, there is no place where it can be sold cheaply. Even the cheapest dragon dung costs 2 galleons a barrel. Not to mention dragon heartstrings. What if ordinary wizards can't afford the price? Don't they use wands? The Ministry of Magic has thought of a way to let Ollivander sell wands to wizards at a low price, and the difference between the prices will be supplied to Ollivander in the form of wand materials by the Ministry of Magic. Germany. But this is limited to each wizard's first wand. The second one is the full amount. How expensive is the full wand? A wand with the most common unicorn tail hair costs 70 to 80 galleons. The Minister of Magic's salary is only 400 galleons a month. The most common magic wand is so expensive, but what about the dragon wand? The price of a dragon wand is between 120 and 240 galleons, that is to say, even the Minister of Magic can buy 10 dragon wands. It's worth half a month's salary. How can you ask ordinary wizards to afford it? Think about Ronald Weasley, he is still using his brother's old wand, and even the core of the unicorn tail hair is exposed, so he is not willing to change it. The Weasley family's financial situation really couldn't afford to change. Generally speaking, wizarding families that were not very wealthy would not buy wands for their children too early. They generally tended to use the old wands of their elders for their children. Wait until your child's magic has stabilized before going to Ollivander to buy a new wand, which can save a lot of money. When Solemn bought everything for Serna and returned to the Leaky Cauldron for lunch, he had already spent 450 galleons. Simply presumptuous, thought Solemn. After dinner, Serna returned to the room and started sorting out the things she bought today, while Solemn closed the door, took out his wand and used an anti-monitoring spell. Seeing Solemn's movements, Serna also put down the things in her hand. What's wrong? I have something to tell you. Solemn sat down on the bed. Can you tell me your mother's full name? After hearing Solemn's words, Serna turned her head and thought for a while. I know what you want to know. You want to see if my unendowed Parseltongue was passed on to me from my mother's house. Nodding, Solemn had to be careful, the gift of Parseltongue got a bad rap. When it comes to Parseltongue, almost all wizards will think of evil dark wizards. This can't be blamed on others. There are very few wizards who can speak Parseltongue, but few of these wizards with the talent of Parseltongue can be regarded as good people. And just during the semester that Silna was enrolled, something that could be related to Parseltongue would happen. Solemn had to be more careful. My mother's full name is very long, but I think my Parseltongue talent may indeed have something to do with her family. Silna brought over Trace, who was basking in the sun by the window. Visi Sabauer Tom, do you know the name? It's one of my mother's middle names. I think that's probably why I speak Parseltongue. Silna added, my mother probably doesn't speak Parseltongue. After thinking about it, Solemn didn't dwell too much on the issue of Parseltongue. He thought that Cerna's talent might change some things, but there were some things that Solemn thought he should say hello to his sister now. After deliberating, Lim decided to reveal something to Selna. Which academy are you going to? Solemn asked. Which one is fine? There doesn't seem to be any obvious difference between the colleges. If possible, I hope you can come to Slytherin, so that I can take care of you. Seeing his sister frown, Solemn quickly added, of course, if you don't want to, Ravenclaw is fine, as long as you don't go to Gryffindor. Quote. She glanced at her brother in surprise. Selna didn't think that her brother didn't want to go to that academy by herself because he disliked Gryffindor. Is there any trouble? Cerna keenly sensed that her brother was hiding something from her. You know Harry Potter, right? It's the so-called savior. As long as he's around, there will be constant trouble. Solemn then told Silna about the process of the Philosopher's Stone incident. You know, that lunatic is not dead yet, and not dead means that he will come back one day. We are both in Hogwarts now, and you should understand what that means. Solemn left Skylar, and Silna didn't go to school in Sculler either. They're both at Hogwarts now, which means they're now under the Ministry of Magic, not the Council of Elders. If the two brothers and sisters are now studying in Skylar, then the outside world will not affect them. No wizard or group dares to come to Skull to make trouble. But Hogwarts is different, the eyes of many forces are gathered there, and Solemn himself knows very well that Hogwarts will not be safe in the next few years, although most of them are unexpected. It's dangerous, as long as you don't follow blindly and get involved, those troubles won't come to you. You look at the little wizards at Hogwarts, there are a few who can get involved in those things. But Solemn was different. When he handed the gaunt ring to Dumbledore, he was already an insider. It's easy to be an outsider, but Solemn himself. Would you be willing? Most people would not be willing to be just a spectator in Solemn's position. In the next semester, which is the first semester after you enroll, there will be incidents in the school, and this incident is still dangerous. If you are not careful, you may die. Waving his hands, Solemn continued. I'm not kidding you, and I'm not kidding you about things like this. So I hope you can come to Slytherin, and I won't interfere with your day-to-day life, but once something happens in a college, I'll take care of you too. Silna lowered her head and touched Trace at her hand, thought for a while, raised her head and said, can I think that you already know what will happen next semester? Or, you were involved in the incident you mentioned. Don't tell anyone. Solemn did not give a positive answer. Doing this under Dumbledore's nose, won't it cause any big trouble? Selna was a little worried. We will meet this holiday, and I will inform Dumbledore to see what he wants to do. This matter may be resolved without anyone noticing it, but according to the temperament of our headmaster, it is estimated that we will have to deal with it again. What a moth. Maybe he will take this opportunity to exercise his savior again. I just say hello to you first. Don't think too much. Exercising Harry Potter. Just like the Sorcerer's Stone. Silna showed a strange expression. I now think it was a mistake for me to choose Hogwarts, but the letter hasn't come yet. You said I chose Beauxbatons, do you agree? Do you think I care about you? Solemn turned around and removed all the magic in the room. I'll go out in the afternoon, and you should be honest and don't run around. Preview the textbook for the first grade. If there is anything you don't understand, I will talk about it when I come back. After speaking, Solemn took his things and went out. Thinking of the poor students who are still sitting on the train, Solemn can't help but gloat. They have been on the train since 8:30 in the morning, and they have to stay on the train for 7 or 8 hours before arriving in London. That is to say, after they get off the train and go home, they can have dinner. Solemn left his sister and went out by himself in the afternoon, mainly to prepare for the next semester. First of all, Solemn planned to go to Slug Zig's pharmacy, which is a potion material store. From its location in Diagon Alley, it can be seen that this shop only does serious business, and none of the materials restricted by the Ministry of Magic can be seen here, and this shop only sells materials, not finished potions. As a result, the business of this store is not very good. Solemn can be regarded as a regular customer here, and most of the potion ingredients he wasted in school were bought from here. So the two bosses in this store are very familiar with him. Ziggs, who was tidying up the shop, saw an acquaintance coming in, and greeted warmly, "I just came to buy materials after a holiday. At your age, you should enjoy the joy of being young, instead of acting like a shut yourself in your room to make potions like a bad old man." "Yes, I think you're right." Solemn rolled his eyes. "Thank you for reminding me, then I'll go back." "Hey, don't do that. I'm just kidding." Seeing Solemn turn around and prepare to leave, Giggs got impatient and hurriedly asked Solemn to stay. Solemn turned and looked at Giggs. "Just you? Where's Slugger? He went to stock up early in the morning, and he hasn't come back yet." Ziggs wiped his dirty hands on the apron casually. "When the little wizards are on vacation, they will meet one after another. For those who come to buy some materials, we have to prepare the goods first. Otherwise, when school starts soon, our goods may be a little tight. Having said so much, what are you going to buy this time?" Giggs looked at Solemn expectantly. "Mandrake roots. You are quite good at picking the time. You come to collect them just a few days after they are ripe." Giggs turned to get the ingredients Solemn requested, and kept talking. "What are you going to use it for? Help sleep the sleeping potion? Or the paralyzing potion? Or..." Speaking of this, Ziggs smiled wretchedly. "Which little girl in the school are you going to give?" "Shut your mouth." Solemn interrupted Ziggs' lewd laugh. "The medicinal properties of mandrake root are plentiful. It has analgesic and anesthetic effects, and is often used as a sleep medicine to help sleep. However, mandrake has certain hallucinogenic ingredients, which will make the user excited first, and then the spirit will become dull. This feature makes mandrake also a material in paralyzing potions." As for what Ziggs said, well, mandrake is still a relatively powerful, one of the main materials in the potion that is more useful when making villains. "Here, according to your usual habits, 5 units of mandrakes." Ziggs suddenly approached Solemn in a cheap way, and said in a low voice, "If you configure that kind, you know right. It's that kind of potion, leave me a few bottles, and I can pay for it. Hey, don't go, you give me that potion, and I'll give you a discount in the future." The location of Slugger's pharmacy is remote, deep in Diagon Alley, and Solemn now has to go back to the entrance of Nocturne Alley. Nocturne Alley is actually not as scary as adults say. As long as you understand the rules here, and add a little bit of luck, generally speaking, trouble will not find you. Nocturne Alley can actually be considered lively. It's not like what adults say to scare their children. It's cold, humid, and dark wizards are everywhere. Children will be arrested by dark wizards as soon as they enter Nocturne Alley. The entrance of Nocturne Alley is directly opposite to Gringotts. This is the busiest area and the place with the largest flow of people. Most of the time, an underage wizard who has exposed himself will not have any major problems as long as he does not go deep into Nocturne Alley. Solemn didn't want to go deep into Nocturne Alley either. Elrond had told him about Nocturne Alley before, so Solemn still knew about Nocturne Alley. What's the matter? Before entering Nocturne Alley, 983, Solemn drank a bottle of aging potion. Aging potion is easy to get, and Solemn will make it himself. After using the aging agent, Solemn not only grew taller, but his voice also matured, so that he would not reveal the fact that he was an underage wizard when he opened his mouth. The entrance to Nocturne Alley is very narrow. This entrance is in the middle of the gap between two shops. Only 2 people can walk side by side. And sometimes there are some down and out wizards sitting on the steps leading down from the intersection, more crowded. Solemn is now covered under his wizard robe, and the hood has been lowered to cover his face. Since the wizard robe is a high-end garment from the outer clothing store, there are several practical small items on this wizard robe. The magic is on it, one of which is that when you put the hood down, No matter how anyone looks at it, you only see a black blob. You get what you pay for, and the robe cost Solemn 50 galleons at the time. Along the wall, Solemn walked out of the long and narrow entrance of Nocturne Alley smoothly, and came to the real business place. Compared with Diagon Alley outside, Nocturne Alley is indeed a bit dark. But it's no wonder that Nocturne Alley is much lower than Diagon Alley, so when you look up, all you see are the shops in Diagon Alley. They take all the light away. Blocked. The shops in Nocturne Alley are very different from the shops in Diagon Alley outside. The shops here don't have clearly marked prices. The price of any item is floating. If you behave like a beginner, just wait, get slaughtered. There are even shops selling poisons here, all kinds of special poisons for magical animals or people. This shop can meet your needs. Most interestingly, there is also a wand shop in Nocturne Alley. But this shop is not self-made like Ollivander. The shop's wands are obtained through illegal means, digging wizards' graves, stealing, snatching, whatever the means. This shop can always get wands to sell. Of course, wands are also accepted here, usually after a killing. Some not so decent wizards will come here to sell wands for money. But when it comes to the most famous shop in Nocturne Alley, it has to be Bogenbach Magic Store. This is the largest shop in Nocturne Alley. It specializes in selling black magic items, some of which are very dangerous. The owner, Mr. Bach, also collects all kinds of strange and evil things while selling them. The reason why this shop is famous is not what it sells, but the surname, Bach. The Bach family is an ancient pure-blood family. Solemn has seen the pure-blood pedigree, and he knows that Harry's godfather, the great-grandfather of Sirius, is Phineas Black. The most unpopular Hogwarts school history. The headmaster's daughter married Herbert Bach, who was Borgenbach's father. If it really counted, Sirius would have to call Borgenbach his uncle. Being able to attract the attention of the famous and so-called oldest and purest Black family, so as to marry, the energy of the Bork family can be glimpsed from it. But here is Nocturne Alley, and there are plenty of lawless and risk-taking wizards here. They don't care what your surname is. Killing and stealing goods is commonplace for these people. The shops that can make a name for themselves in Nocturne Alley, if they don't have some means, will have closed their doors long ago. It's not that no one had the idea of Bogenbach's magic shop, but these wizards who put it into action disappeared quietly, and as time passed, no one thought about it again. But today, Solemn didn't intend to go there when he came to Nocturne Alley. He was going to a shop called Magic Lavis, which deals in alchemy items. Solemn pushed open the door and walked into the slightly dark shop. Hello, what do you need? A thin man with a sullen face came over and looked Solemn up and down. That's what it's like to do business in Nocturne Alley. The shopkeeper has to weigh up the buyer and see if he can make a killing. At the same time, they are also very cautious, for fear of offending some ruthless characters. Usually, it's not like there are no guys who pretend to be a pig and eat a tiger at the beginning, but show their true colors after being slaughtered, and in turn slaughter the store. Solemn didn't pay attention to the man's gaze. I need a tool that can break through the anti-magic skin. A dagger or a saw blade will do. Do you have any? After watching for a long time, I didn't see Solem's face. Seeing that there were no flaws, the thin man nodded and said, "Come with me. What kind of magical creature are you going to cut?" On the same level as the black dragon. Solemn followed, but kept a certain distance from the man in front. Black dragon. HMPH, you are quite courageous. You dare to go to the Hesidia Islands and poach on the territory of the McFasty family. The man walking in front said so. This wizard obviously misunderstood what Solemn meant. He thought that Solemn came here to buy tools for poaching in the Hesidia. In the family's hereditary territory, as long as they found poachers, they would be killed on the spot without discussion. But poachers are still emerging endlessly. In the final analysis, the words are still used: people make money and birds die for food. Solemn didn't try to explain the misunderstanding, but instead threatened, "Don't let me hear the wind outside, or you will look good to me." It is also impossible for Solemn to tell him the truth. Is it possible to tell him that I am going to cut the skin of a 1,000-year-old basilisk? The consequences are much more serious than poaching a black dragon. Although it is illegal to breed basilisks, the method of breeding basilisks is no secret. But in the magic world, almost no one would cultivate basilisks, mainly because they couldn't afford to wait. It takes at least 300 years for a basilisk to be useful, but how many people can afford to wait for 300 years? Isn't it cheap for others if you cultivate it yourself? If news of a 1,000-year-old basilisk spreads, what will the consequences be? It is very serious, and the Presbyterian Church may even intervene. The Millennium Basilisk is full of treasures, all its internal organs are priceless treasures. In some ways, the 1,000-year-old basilisk at Hogwarts is more precious than Dumbledore's phoenix. Although phoenixes are rare, there are a few wizards in Europe who have pets like phoenixes, but the 1,000-year-old basilisk. 4.2 Solemn believes that killing the basilisk so easily is unforgivable. What's the difference between killing and pulling out a tooth? Solemn wants to maximize the value of the basilisk, but the specific operation needs to be discussed in the long run. But that didn't stop Solemn from preparing some things that might come in handy. Tools for cutting snake skin, for example. If you want to cut the skin of the 1,000-year-old basilisk, or the scales, ordinary things will not work. You must use special alchemy items, but what Solemn can think of is similar to the scales of the 1,000-year-old basilisk, that is, only the scales of the black dragon are left. The skinny wizard took out a strangely shaped dagger. It can cut open the belly of a dragon, 500 galleons, no bargaining. What I want to cut is the dragon scale. If I cut the dragon's belly, what else will I come to you for? Solemn said disdainfully, if you treat me as a fool, then I will treat you as a dead person. After you think about it, we will talk to you again. I spoke. The dark-faced wizard looked at Sam unmoved. I hear your words 10 times a day, 500 galleons, no bargaining. Solemn turned and left. He has some spare money, but he is not prepared to be slaughtered by others. If it doesn't work, go to the Bogenbach store to have a look. Just when Solemn pushed open the door and leaned out with half of his body, a strange voice sounded. I hand over the store to you, and that's how you do business. It's a nonsense. This customer, I'm really sorry, this guy is an idiot, don't be as knowledgeable as him. Solemn smiled secretly, finally came out, turned around and saw a hunched figure slowly appearing from the dark corner of the shop. Get in. You're the one who does business like this. After reprimanding the dark-faced wizard, the visitor bowed to Solemn and said, I'm really sorry, this idiot is a distant relative of mine, and his family entrusted him give me. I'm not interested in hearing this. Do you have anything I want? Solemn looked extremely impatient. There are some tools that can cut the anti-magic skin. Please follow me. The new wizard nodded and bowed. Let me say this first. What I want is to cut the hardest skin. Don't fool me with something that cuts the belly of a dragon. No matter what magical creature it is, the outer skin of the abdomen is relatively easy to cut. Places like the back 25 are often the strongest parts of a creature with scales. The scales on a healthy dragon's body are extremely strong, and most tools don't want to leave a trace on them. To deal with such things, special tools must be used, and most of these tools are made through alchemy. This type of tool has a narrow range of applications and is only used when dealing with dragon hides, or other animals with strong skin. So as long as they are not wizards engaged in related industries, most people will not equip such tools. Such professional tools are expensive and have a short service life. But as long as Solemn can really get rid of the 1,000-year-old basilisk, let alone one set of tools, even 10 or 20 sets of tools can be earned back. Looking at the little wizard who was leading the way, Sam felt like a mirror in his heart about what happened just now. If it was a fat sheep, the wizard at the beginning would have killed him fiercely. If it was a shrewd person, the little wizard will come out in due time and get on with business. Here, there are some really good things. The little wizard lifted a piece of carpet on the ground, revealing a trapdoor, but the price. Solemn glanced at the still closed trapdoor and said, You bring it up. I'll talk about the price after I've looked at it. HMPH, if I go into the basement with you, only one person will come out. Solemn hadn't heard much about these things. Some foolish wizards, or wizards who went shopping in Nocturne Alley for the first time, thought they were shopping in Diagon Alley. Slaughter, then this basement in front of Solemn's eyes. Solemn was sure that if he really went into the basement stupidly, there would be an accident in all likelihood. Hearing Solemn's words, the little wizard showed an embarrassed expression. There are a lot of things here, and it will take a lot of time to carry them up. Looking at the clumsy performance in front of him, Solemn said disdainfully, "You can either bring the things up, or I'll leave now." Solemn could see that the wizard in front of him was hesitating. Just then, footsteps sounded behind Solemn. Solim's left hand was already gripping his wand. "Uncle, don't talk nonsense. Although this kid's clothes are a bit tricky, I can't see his face, but I just went back and looked at him. He is not yet an adult. Did he use aging agents? Boy. The wizard who started blocked Solim's retreat from behind. Oh. Still a little guy. That's a good feeling, haha, then there's no need to go down, just put this kid down here." The wizard in front of Solemn no longer stooped, he straightened his back, obviously, his vulnerable appearance was faked from the beginning. "Before I do it, I have a question, how do you know that I'm underage?" Solemn is ready, his house fire flickering can be released at any time. "Boy. Get your hands out. Don't play tricks." Solemn had a wand against his back, a feeling he knew very well. "I advise you not to hold my wand against my back, I have warned you." Tilting his head, Solemn used his peripheral vision to determine the position of the wizard behind him. "Haha, look, tisk tisk," the wizard in front of Solemn teased, "this little guy is interesting, but we don't have time to waste with you, just stun him and take him to the basement." After finishing speaking, Solemn the wizard in front of him turned to open the trapdoor. "It's now." Solemn shook his right hand, under his will, the bone spur appeared in his hand without warning, and the flickering fierce fire that had been preparing hit the head of the wizard behind him directly. At such a close distance, Solemn was also afraid of hurting himself, so he didn't release the magic with all his strength, but it was enough. The wizard who had lost his head was already beginning to crumble. The wizard in front of Solemn had just lifted the trapdoor when he noticed movement behind him, but he never expected that what happened was very different from what he expected. In his cognition, there is no problem at all for his nephew to deal with an underage wizard. "Okay, move this kid in, and I'll close the shop door first." Before he could turn around, Solemn hit him with a stun spell. "Really, can't you do business well?" Without hesitation, Solemn stepped forward and gave the stunned wizard a hard hit on the head with his wand. Solemn looked back and forth, and one was without a head, 10 was a hole in the head with his own bone spurs. The two fell on Solim's side one after the other. Solemn raised his hand and looked at the wand in his hand. There were still traces of the blow just now, red blood and white brains. As soon as Solemn loosened his right hand, the bone spur disappeared, and some things left on it began to fall freely because there were no attachments. The entire hands-on process didn't even last 10 seconds, and the two men made an empirical error. When they learned that Solemn was still a 413 underage wizard, the vigilance of the two people was lowered to the minimum. Moreover, Solemn was pointed at the back with a wand, let alone a little wizard, even an adult wizard would be subdued under such circumstances. But what they didn't expect was Solim's bone spur. This wand didn't need to be pulled out at all. As long as Solemn shook hands, the wand would appear in his hand. Before the wizard behind him could react, he was ended by Solim's fierce flame flickering. And the wizard in front thought that his nephew was making a move behind him, and he didn't take it seriously at all. An underage wizard was pointed at his back with a magic wand by an adult wizard. No one could have imagined the possibility of being knocked down. It's an adult wizard. What's the point? You knocked me out when you came up, so there's nothing like that. Solemn finished his knife and began to mock at the two corpses. A black shop like yours will be cleaned up sooner or later, but this it's cheap for me. Solemn didn't dispose of the corpse first, but closed the shop door first. He was going to search the store, but it was a pity that he didn't bring his suitcase. He only brought a dragon skin bag with the stretching curse cast on him, otherwise the store could be evacuated. Why don't you go back and get the box? Anyway, the leaky cauldron is not too far from here. Thinking of this, Solemn started looking for the back door in the store, and by the way, he threw the bodies of the two into the basement, and covered the original carpet. Coming out of the store's back door, Solemn returned to the leaky cauldron without haste. Under Serna's surprised gaze, she picked up her suitcase and left without even saying hello. Back in the store, Solemn was not in a hurry to search. Instead, He walked around the entire store, and even destroyed the fireplace on the second floor, lest someone suddenly come here through the fireplace. On a cabinet on the first floor, Solemn found an object. Through experiments and observations, Solemn determined that this was the object used to identify himself as a miner. This thing is interesting, but the application area is very small, so it's useless. Solemn threw the thing into the box without any hassle. I have to say that there are still a lot of good things in the store of Amazing Lavis, but of course, there are more garbage. Solemn simply threw all the things he saw into the box. Fortunately, the box Elrond gave Solemn was big enough, otherwise it really couldn't hold so many things. Solemn is going to put away all the things first, and then slowly screen them when he goes back. The sooner you leave this kind of right and wrong place, the better. No one knows if there will be any changes after staying for a long time. Solemn shook his hand, using his wand for a long time and frequently, fatigued the muscles in his hand. But at last I moved almost all the things in the store. Only then did Solemn remember that there were still 2 corpses in the basement to be dealt with. One was the result of Fiendfire blinking, and the other was stabbed to death by his wand. He at least wanted to cover up these traces, and the most convenient way was to burn them with a fire. However, Solemn found a jar of corrosive potion in the store, and he was going to use this to destroy the corpse. Hey! It's really dark, I can't see anything. Solemn drew out his wand and used a fluorescent flash to illuminate the dimly lit basement. 2 corpses were lying on the ground in strange postures. Solemn didn't pay attention to the corpse on the ground, but looked at the basement. The basement is not very big. Solemn estimated that it is less than 30 ping. 3 walls are filled with shelves, and there is a workbench in front of one wall. Solemn didn't look carefully, and neatly packed all the things here and threw them into the box, except for the 2 corpses on the ground. Without any nonsense, Solemn poured a whole pot of corrosive potion on the 2 concrete bodies. Having done this, Solemn returned to the surface before being choked to death by the smell of the caustic potion. Looking at the empty room, looking at the empty shelves, Solemn felt a little emotional for a while. He was obviously planning to deal honestly, whoever imagined it would end up like that. But this incident also reminded Solemn, if it is not a fluke this time, then it should be him who is lying in the basement now. Yes, Solemn thought his escape this time was mostly a fluke. If the 2 wizards hadn't relaxed their vigilance after learning that they were a minor wizard, they would have no chance of fighting against 2 adult wizards, especially in such a small place. Solemn thought of the alchemy item that could see through his disguise. It is here, and maybe it is also available in other shops in Nocturne Alley. It is better for him not to come to Nocturne Alley casually in the future. Looking at the messy shop he had rummaged through, Solemn began to recall the whole incident in his own measures, wanting to see if there was anything missing. Solemn was resting his chin and thinking about something, when out of the corner of his eye he caught a glimpse of a portrait hanging on the wall, but there was nothing in the portrait. Broken backquote. Solemn suddenly realized something. A splinter instantly shattered the portrait. It can only be burned. I hope it can be burned cleanly. Solemn knew that it was time to race against time, so he didn't hesitate at all. Fire. Golden flames spewed out from the bone spur in Solemn's right hand, instantly setting the shop on fire. Solemn retreated back while maintaining the spell. It's on fire. It's on fire. The people in Nocturne Alley discovered the situation here. Solemn didn't panic about this. He used the flame curse. The magic fire from the flame curse would produce smoke when burning things. If it was Fiendfire, no one would notice it unless it was burned outside. Solemn's only worry now is that the burning is not complete, and some of the traces he left are not completely destroyed. Within 5 minutes of Solemn slipping away, the fire of the magic lavis was extinguished. 3 wizards in black robes stood atop the still smoking ruins. What the hell is going on? We came here as soon as we received the news. It was still a step late. If the place where the portrait was hung was not too remote, we should have known it immediately. Both Lavis and his nephew were dead, and the portrait saw them. It was thrown into the basement. It doesn't matter if these 2 trash are dead. But what the rich family wants is in this store, and they deliberately went through such a hidden channel, so as not to be discovered by others. Tell me, is there someone who leaked the news? It's unlikely. The goods just arrived today. If the news is really going to leak, it's either the rich family or the three of us. Think about it carefully, how to explain to them. The basement is here, and hopefully their bodies will give us some clues. Who did it? Lavis is not a weak hand. The portrait says that the uncle and nephew were killed in an instant. Look at the corpse first, and see if you can see anything. When the three black-robed wizards looked at the pus on the ground and some fragments of clothes, they didn't speak for a while. This is because they put out the fire quickly, otherwise after a while, even the pus would be gone. It's difficult now. After leaving Nocturne Alley, Solemn found a deserted corner in Diagon Alley, drank a drop of the shrinking potion, which counteracted the effect of the aging potion, and Solemn turned back into the appearance of an underage wizard. Hood down, Solemn even bought 2 cones at Florin's Soda before going back. Seeing her brother come back from the outside, Serna said hello. She is lying on the bed now, playing with her little snake, Tellus, while looking at Yikai, the first grader. Strawberry and banana, which one do you want? Solemn asked, taking out the cone he had just bought at Florin's cold drink shop. Strawberries. Silna didn't look up, but just opened her hand, motioning for Solemn to hand the item to her. Don't get it on the bed. Solemn said casually. It's okay, you can clean it anyway. Serna took a bite. Besides, this bed is for you to sleep on. Quote. I have some things to be busy. If I have something to do, I will knock on the box. Quote. Solemn opened his own box and couldn't wait to get in. Standing on the stairs, looking at the mess below, Solemn was a little speechless. Hopefully don't break too many things. The ground was covered with a large pile of things that Solemn threw in, and Solemn didn't know how long it would take to sort out so many things, but now that he was on vacation, he had plenty of time. Solemn was about to sort out what was broken and what was obviously a hoax, and when Solemn hadn't finished the job, Serna poked her head out of the box to remind him that it was time for dinner. When Solemn and Silna were eating on the first floor of the Leaky Cauldron, they heard many people talking about the fire that happened in Nocturne Alley this afternoon. Solemn pricked up his ears and began to pay attention to what these people were talking about. As Solemn expected, someone turned up there afterwards, and was still looking around in the ruins. But when Solemn heard that people from the rich family also came to the scene of the incident, he knew that there must be something important in his box. He didn't have time to look at Qian Dezhao when he was rummaging around the store, so he had no way of knowing exactly what he took from the rich family. But the things that can make a wizarding family like the Ritchie family care about are definitely not simple things. Solemn decided to pack up those things overnight to see if there are any good treasures. However, to achieve this, there is still a problem to be solved. Well, you can sleep in your room tonight. I have some things to do. I need to use the box tonight. Solemn said to Serna. Didn't it be agreed? I'll sleep inside, you'll sleep outside. Sierna put down her fork, holding her mouth against Solemn dissatisfied. Just tonight, I do have some things to do. Then you do your thing, and I'll sleep with mine. Solemn really didn't want Sierna to see the stolen goods there, and it would be difficult for him to explain. I went out for a while in the afternoon, and brought so many things when I came back. Serna is not a fool. On the contrary, she is still very smart, and she will definitely be sympathetic to the fact that Solemn came back in the afternoon, and then went out with the suitcase. Questionable. Solemn scratched his head. How about going back to the room and giving her a stun spell? How about pouring some water of life and death into the water she drank? Silna finally slept in the room, and Solemn worked all night in his box. When he came back from dinner, Solemn locked himself in the box. He began to screen the packed items, and as Solemn expected, most of them were deceitful, and there were some that he couldn't understand. These things were placed together in different categories. Finally, there were 3 things in front of Solemn: a strangely shaped knife, a piece of grass in a small bottle, and an egg the size of a palm. It was the knife that made Solemn feel the most uncomfortable. I don't know what kind of animal bone the handle is, the gray blade, the green blade. Solemn looked at this dagger, feeling very strange in his heart. His reason told himself that he should stay away from it, but in his heart he longed to use this knife to hurt others. Solemn didn't know what the specific function of the knife was, but it was clear that the knife was a weird alchemical work. Solemn made up his mind to hide this evil thing first, and ask his grandfather when he is free. As for what the grass in the bottle was, Solemn had no idea at all. His current knowledge reserve has no impression of the grass in the bottle. But this does not prevent Solemn from knowing that the grass is not simple, the reason lies in the grass container. This bottle is entirely made of magic power crystals. There is such a magic power crystal in the things that Gilvez gave to Solemn, but it is only the size of a thumb, and this one is as big as the entire palm of an adult. And hollowed out such a large piece of magic power crystal, and then carved it into the shape of a bottle. Solemn didn't think the things inside would be simple. But what makes Solemn depressed is that he has no idea what this grass is inside. The last egg, or rather, is something that looks like an egg. Its surface is not smooth, but pitted, and the entire surface is covered with cracks. Solemn is going to ask Professor Kettleburn after the semester starts. If there is no accident, the next semester will be his last year of teaching. After hiding these three evil things in the box, Solemn looked at the pile of garbage piled up on the other side. These things are parallel imports to deceive people, and many things are just superficial goods and worthless. Solemn was hesitant about what to do with these things, because they were stolen goods, and he certainly couldn't just throw them out. But it's not a problem to just put it in your own box without throwing it out. Or, if you can't, throw it in the room of requirement, which is full of garbage anyway. Solemn finally decided to throw all the garbage in Hogwarts, so that almost no one would be able to find it. CFBJ something. The Black Shop, Magical Lavis, also sent Solemn a lot of materials and books. This could make Solemn rattle for a while again. After having breakfast with Serna, Solemn went back to his room to catch up on sleep. As long as there are no special circumstances, or if there is not enough time, Solemn will generally not use those refreshing potions. Not long after Solemn lay down, Serna woke him up. The reason was that an owl flew out of the window. Here, yours. Selna took down the letter, glanced at it and handed it to Solemn. Solemn took the letter with one hand, and picked his eyes with the other. It was sent to you by the Malfoy family. Selna said. Draco returned to Malfoy Manor. The first thing he did was to send a letter to Solemn, inviting him to come to Malfoy Manor as a guest. The letter also said that Draco's father, Lucius Malfoy, hoped to thank him in person. Draco also said in the letter that he told his father what happened at the end of last semester, but when he sent the letter, Lucius Malfoy was still worried and had no appetite for dinner. It seems that this invitation is not just a simple thank you. Solemn took out the quill and began to write down the time he planned to arrive. Your classmate? Selna asked. Yes, the Malfoys have invited me to their house for a few days. Solemn refolded the letter and handed it to the owl, feeding the owl some bread shoulders along the way. Let's go together. Before Serna could speak, Solemn said, do you think that I, the older brother, will leave my younger sister alone? Well, anyway, Grandpa said that he will listen to you when he is outside. Selna saw the owl flying away, and stepped forward to close the window. When did you make an appointment? The two of us will go there early tomorrow morning. Solemn lay back on the bed, hugged Luna who was curled up beside him, used the fireplace to go over. Luna, I'm so sorry for neglecting you. He said and scratched the black cat's chin. By the way, I haven't paid attention to it for a while. What did Luna eat? Solemn seemed to have just remembered something. Serna rolled her eyes at her brother, and said contemptuously, are you ashamed to ask? Did you take care of her after you brought her back? I made all the food she ate. Ah. Solemn twitched the corner of his mouth in embarrassment, unable to say anything. After shopping with his sister, he ran to Nocturne Alley, and what happened left him no time to pay attention to other things. I'm so sorry, Luna. Solemn hugged the black cat and kept stroking her head. By the way, where is she when she usually goes to the bathroom? Isn't she in the house? After speaking, Solemn sniffed vigorously. Does it seem to have no smell? As for the smell of cat feces, Solemn can be said to be very familiar with it in his previous life. She's a lady. Selna walked over and hugged Luna from Solim's arms. She's all done by herself. Hey. That's a good relationship, and I don't even need to buy cat litter. Then does she usually grab things? Catch something? Serna looked at Solemn in surprise. That's not true, she is usually very obedient. Ha! You don't even have to buy a scratcher. This cat in the wizarding world is really easy to feed, Solemn thought happily. That costs a lot less. Recalling the experience of raising cats in his previous life, Solemn looked at Luna in his sister's arms again. He still had one thing to confirm. We'll give her a bath tonight, Solemn said, narrowing his eyes. Brother, are you sick? Serna looked her brother up and down. If you haven't rested well, I won't bother you, you go to sleep. Huh? What does that mean? Seeing Solim's confused face, Serna said speechlessly. If she gets dirty, don't you know how to use a cleaning spell? Or do you mean that you can't even clean it up? An airy summation. What? I'll sleep a little longer. Solemn turned around in shame, and patted the pillow. Look at my mind, I'm still dazed. Just when Solemn fell asleep with a sense of shame, Draco, who had just received Solim's reply, found his father, Lucius, in the Malfoy Manor in Wiltshire. Father, Solemn said he would bring his sister with him tomorrow morning. Draco handed the letter to his father. Glancing at the letter, Lucius said thoughtfully, Xiao Long, this friend of yours is very good. If you follow him, maybe you can really restore the glory of the Malfoy family. But, father. Looking at the hesitant son, Lucius said, tell me, is there anything we can't say between father and son? If that person came back. Solemn said he would come back sooner or later, maybe even soon. At that time. What should we do? After listening to Draco's words, Lucius was also a little dazed for a while. Yes, what should we do? Lucius himself knew very well that if that person really came back, he would definitely summon the Death Eaters immediately. At that time, go by yourself or not lose. Go. Then what I said before, no matter whether it was controlled by the Imperious curse or deceived, in short, the excuses I said before are all self-defeating. If that person fails again in the end, then, can he escape the trial again like last time? If he can't escape, what will happen to the Malfoy family? And even if he goes, no one can guarantee that the Dark Lord will liquidate people like them. Death Eaters like them knew how moody the Dark Lord was. If he went by himself, and was given to Avada by the angry Dark Lord, then where would he go to reason? And once he died, more than half of the Malfoy family would collapse. Not going. Lucius is very clear about the consequences of not going. Once he fails to respond to the call of the Dark Mark immediately, he will be deemed a traitor by the Dark Lord, and his former colleagues, whether they want to or not, will like it or not, they will come to hunt and kill themselves and their families. Lucius is very familiar with this set. After all, in the era when the Dark Lord was raging, he did this kind of work a lot. The Dark Lord will return to the wizarding world one day, and these Death Eaters know it very well. On the night when the Dark Lord failed, not only ordinary wizards in the wizarding world of the UK were celebrating, but some Death Eaters among them were also secretly happy. They finally got rid of this moody wizard and could finally lead a normal life. But they were not happy for a long time. A cruel fact was placed in front of these Death Eaters who were forced to join by the Dark Lord's coercion. The Dark Lord is not dead. When they looked at the dark mark on their arms, they knew at that time that the current Dark Lord was very weak, but he was not dead yet. As a result, there was a disagreement among the Death Eaters, whether to go to their former masters or not. Led by Lucius' aunt, Bellatrix, they advocated to find their master immediately and help him make a comeback. But the rest of the Death Eaters were all forced to join, and they were reluctant, and they seized the opportunity when it was possible to get rid of the Dark Lord's control. They tipped off the Ministry of Magic at the time and asked the Ministry of Magic to come forward and wipe out this group of former colleagues. Bella and his group were finally arrested and imprisoned in Azkaban. The sentence was permanent. Although Lucius wished that the Ministry of Magic would sentence these people to death, let the Dementor give them a kiss, and solve these Death Eaters who wholeheartedly served the Dark Lord once and for all. But most of the imprisoned Death Eaters who were loyal to the Dark Lord or relatives of their pure blood families, such as Lucius' own wife, Narcissa, she and Bella are sisters, before they married, they are all surnamed Blake. After Narcissa's request and the internal communication among their families, it was decided to spare these people's lives. Just keep them in Azkaban and not let them come out, there is no need to be so extreme. Azkaban has never had a prison escape record anyway. With the unsavory relatives out of the way for the time being, the rest of the ex-Death Eaters turned their attention to another question: how did the Dark Lord not die? Ordinary wizards may not be aware of what happened that night, but their families have already investigated the matter clearly. Lily Evans used a blood curse to deflect the Dark Lord's killing curse, leading to the Dark Lord's failure. But these people couldn't be more clear about what it would be like for a person who was hit by the death curse. After all, they were all familiar with the death curse. But the Dark Lord survived his own killing curse. Moreover, although his soul is weak, it is full of vitality, which is clearly reflected in the dark mark. There are few, but not none, ways to prevent unnatural death. These surviving families began to investigate and read the ancient books of each family. The final result came out. Most likely the Dark Lord made the Horcruxes, so he didn't die outright after being hit by his own killing curse. As long as his Horcruxes are not destroyed, the Dark Lord will not die completely. Although these ex-Death Eaters guessed almost exactly why the Dark Lord didn't die. But no one knows where the Dark Lord hid his Horcrux, and they have no way of doing it. But Lucius has a secret deep in his heart that no one tells. The Dark Lord once gave him a diary. He had a frightening guess about the journal. It was the Dark Lord's Horcrux. But Lucius himself knew that the Dark Lord actually didn't trust them Death Eaters, he just used them pure blood families as tools. If the Dark Lord really gave him his Horcrux, it can only explain one problem: the Dark Lord did not make a Horcrux. Lucius suddenly didn't want to stay here anymore, he wanted to study the diary carefully. Determine whether it is a Horcrux. If not, then think that you are thinking too much, and make a false alarm. If it is really a Horcrux, how should I deal with it? If the Dark Lord really gave me one of his Horcruxes, it means that Malfoy still has a certain status in the heart of the Dark Lord, and the Dark Lord still more attention to the Malfoy family. But the things he did after his failure obviously failed his value, so when the Dark Lord returns, how will he rectify the Malfoy family? Should I try to find the Dark Lord? Even if it's just for show. Lucius frowned, thinking about something restlessly. Father. Draco looked at his frowning father, wondering what happened. Draco's voice woke Lucius up. Xiaolong, please tell me about that friend of yours. I want to know more about it. Maybe this line from Selwyn can help Malfoy tide over things to a certain extent. Lucius knew it was time to take sides again. Just like 11 years ago, if I had made the same choice as those people, I guess there would be a cell of my own in Azkaban. 11 years later, I will face another choice, whether to continue to stand on the opposite side of the Dark Lord, or abandon my current position, and help the Dark Lord when he is at his worst and most embarrassing, and then wait for him to return. Fu will get a lot of rewards. Lucius is not sure now, even if the Dark Lord returns in the end, who can guarantee that he will not fail again? But if the Dark Lord returns, and he can be said to have betrayed him Death Eaters, then even he ultimately fails, and the Malfoys are doomed. After listening to Draco's description of Solemn, Lucius decided that he must receive the pair of brothers and sisters from the Selwyn family well tomorrow. If they can connect with the Selwyn family, then the survival of the Malfoy family will be guaranteed. Lucius even has an unrealistic but bold idea: hope that Draco can be engaged to the upcoming Miss Selwyn. If it can be done, then the Dark Lord will definitely not be able to touch the Malfoy family, at least Draco will definitely not be harmed by the Dark Lord. If Draco knew what was going on in his father's mind, he didn't know how he would react. Knowing that Draco's friend would come through the fireplace the next morning, Lucius immediately contacted the Ministry of Magic's Transportation Department and asked them to set up a dedicated line between the leaky cauldron and his own fireplace. Although Malfoy is down and out now, he still has some energy. As the saying goes, manpower is short, and Malfoy donates a large sum of galleons to the Ministry of Magic every year. As long as a small matter like this is notified, it can be done immediately. When Solemn and Silna came to Malfoy Manor by special line the next day, Silna, who had just walked out of the furnace, said to Solemn, who came out later, "Isn't it that the way the flow network moves is very bad?" "I think not bad. It was the first time for Serna to use a fireplace when she was so old. Believe me, when I look back, I'll find an ordinary fireplace to make you feel what it means to be spinning, and make you feel like you don't want to eat all day." Solemn looked around at the luxurious decoration and furniture, and Solemn knew that Malfoy Manor was up to inches. "Solemn, you are finally here." Draco performed a meeting ceremony between pure blood wizards, but he was standing in front of the fireplace early in the morning. For distinguished guests, pure blood wizards have their own way of receiving guests. Generally, the heirs are important members of the family make contact first, and then they are taken to the reception room to meet the patriarch. And there is another taboo in this process, that is, guests must not see their house elves, which is a great offense and provocation in the eyes of these pure-blood wizards. The fireplace in Malfoy's house was very clean. Solemn and Cerna came out without any dust on them. They must have had the house elf clean it up beforehand. Solemn greeted Draco casually, and then began to look at the decorations in the room. I have to say that Malfoy Manor and Selwyn Castle are completely different styles. The decoration here is extremely luxurious, and almost all the furniture is inlaid with gold rims. In comparison, Selwyn Castle is too gloomy. It's like a magic cave. Okay, Draco, don't use this set. You, 903. Know it. I don't care about this set, and I have never learned that set of etiquette. Then Solemn stepped forward and patted West Erna's shoulder, said, Here, let me introduce, this is my lovely sister, Cerna. Silna saluted Draco very politely. Although Cerna is a girl, she is a serious Selwyn. She has attended etiquette classes, which is different from Solemn. Okay, take us to meet your father. Solemn straightened his collar and turned his head to look at the marble fireplace behind him. Malfoy Manor, the residence of the wealthy pure-blood Malfoy family, is located in Wiltshire, England. This manor is extremely luxurious. Walking on the ground, you can't feel the hardness of the floor at all, because the floor is covered with thick carpets. When they walked through the corridor, Solemn even found that the portraits here were inlaid alongside Phnom Penh. The various artworks are placed in just the right place, making these huge rooms neither feel empty nor crowded. Led by Draco, they finally came to the living room. A huge chandelier hangs above the living room, and the walls of the entire room are covered with purple wallpaper. Seeing the appearance of the living room, Solemn always felt a little familiar. Thinking about it carefully, isn't this the place where Harry Potter came to save people? Solemn raised his head and looked at the huge chandelier on the ceiling. This should be the place where Dobby broken chandelier. Father is in the study. I'll call him right now, please sit down first. Draco then pointed to the steaming teacup on the table and said, Good Sri Lankan black tea, please enjoy. No matter how much you talk, I'm going to throw up. Solemn took Cerna to sit in the guest seat. When visiting someone's house, you can't sit in the main seat. Solemn still has this common sense. Soon, Lucius and Draco came out of the study one after the other. It has to be said that Lucius Malfoy does have a good skin. A black robe with a silver border on the hem, smooth long hair, a kind smile, and a tall and straight figure. If you put it outside, it's definitely a killer of young women. Draco always told me that he made a great friend in school. Lucius shook Solemn's hand and smiled. I want to thank you, Mr. Selwyn. You know how surprised I am as a father when he showed me the silent spell. After finishing speaking, he glanced at Draco in relief. Although many people said that the current head of the Malfoy family, Lucius Malfoy, is such a treacherous person, but this thank you really came from Lucius' heart. As the saying goes, a good son is like a father. What kind of temperament is Draco? As a father, can he still not know? In Solemn's own words, flying eagle and horse, a proper playboy. But after meeting Solemn, Draco was able to cast a silent spell, even though it was just a very simple disarming spell. But this is enough to make Lucius happy. He thinks this is the beginning of Draco's transformation. As long as Draco can get rid of his original temper, he can rest assured to hand over the Malfoy family to him. After everyone was seated, Lucius looked at Silna, who was beside Solemn. This must be the young lady of the Selwyn family. I met your father, Ogle Selwyn, once, and he was in magical virtuosity often puts me to shame. Cerna's father, aka Solemn's cheap father, Ogier, is indeed a very talented wizard. Elrond once told Solemn that among the wizards he knew, who could become a great wizard before the age of 50, there must be Ogier. However, Solemn's cheap father is out all the year round to carry out the tasks of the Presbyterian Church. Solemn remembers seeing him 3 times. Thank you for your compliments to my father, but I rarely see him. Silna responded politely. Oh, that's a pity, but that's it. Our family also had this experience in Malfoy's glory days. I remember that the head of the family was Brewster. Solemn and Cerna could only listen to it, and pretended to be listening carefully and very interested. After all, who would dare to interrupt the elders when they were talking? Although Solemn pretended to listen, he didn't think Lucius was in the mood to talk to them about these things. Solemn didn't believe that Draco would not tell Lucius what happened in school when he came back. After making sure that Voldemort was not dead, Lucius should be very anxious now, and he should not be sure where to stand now. This is very understandable. If Malfoy once again sided with Voldemort, let alone how Voldemort would punish these families who had betrayal experience. If Voldemort failed again in the end, Malfoy would not be so easy to hide this time. After all, Malfoy is down and out now. Although he can influence the Ministry of Magic to a certain extent, in such a big matter, let alone Malfoy, there is no hope of escaping punishment even if he joins forces with other families. But if they are determined to fight against Voldemort, how long can the Malfoy family live after Voldemort returns? Can they survive until Voldemort fails? This is the true portrayal of Lucius Hart now. Both sides are dangerous, but the difference is that one dies faster and the other dies slower. During Lucius's personal speech, Solemn and Silna agreed with each other from time to time, and finally made it to lunchtime. Solemn knew very well that after lunch, Lucius should find himself talk alone. That's when the feature film will be. Solemn ate far better at Malfoy's than he did at Selwyn's. And the environment is also good, with plenty of light. Not like Solemn in Selwyn Castle, feeding like a mouse in a dark corner. After dinner, Solemn took the initiative to ask Draco to take Silna for a stroll in the manor, a proposal that Lucius agreed to very much. When Draco took Silna away, Lucius couldn't wait to take Solemn into his study, and then cast several spells in the room. To prevent eavesdropping, to prevent peeping. Lucius would not nervous, he knew very well what they were going to say next, and these things must not be passed on. Seeing Lucius' movements, Solemn didn't say anything, but obediently found an armchair 42 and sat down. After finishing his work, Lucius also sat down. Solemn, may I call you that? Okay, Uncle Lucius. I think you have something to say to me. Lucius looked struggling. You and Draco are friends, right? Of course, to be honest, there are only a few people who usually talk to me in school. After hearing about you, I no longer regard you as a peer like Draco. Whether it's about you at Hogwarts, or… Speaking of this, Lucius paused for a moment, what you did in that school in Skylar. Solemn was not surprised that Lucius knew about Skylar. Although Malfoy was down and out, his ancestors were rich anyway, and there were always some contacts left behind. It is not difficult to inquire about such a completely unclassified matter. If something happens to the Malfoy family in the future, can you help Draco? Solemn knew exactly what Lucius' words meant. He was worried that his choice would put the Malfoy family in huge trouble, because at that point, whether it was trouble from Voldemort or trouble from the Ministry of Magic, there was nothing he could do, Lucius, and he could only hope that he would be able to survive the crisis. Give Draco a hand every now and then, and maybe give the Malfoy family a little hope. Reality issues, and the looming reality of those realities, made Lucius completely lose his adult restraint when confronting Solemn. He could be said to be out of proportion now, because in the eyes of anyone who knows the situation, the Malfoy family is now on the cusp. Any choice Lucius makes will have a huge impact on the future Malfoy family. A family like the Malfoys would definitely have to choose sides between Voldemort and the Ministry of Magic. There was no such thing as a neutral. If you want to remain neutral before the coming storm, you must either be like Weasley now, who is completely worthless, or be like Selwyn, who has a deep foundation and strong strength, and can ensure that either side will not affect itself. The most uncomfortable thing is the Malfoy family. They have some strength and status, and have the value of being wooed, but they don't have the strength to protect themselves wisely. The Malfoy family is powerful, rich, and well connected in the wizarding world. This is where the value of the Malfoy family lies. As long as they can control the Malfoy family, then these things that the Malfoy family has can be used by them. And Voldemort also took a fancy to these characteristics of pure blood families, whether they were lured or threatened. In short, many pure blood families in the Ying country were gathered under Voldemort's command. These families were also unwilling to be at the mercy of Voldemort, but they had no choice. Their skills were inferior to others, they couldn't beat Voldemort, and they wanted to ensure the continuation of the family, so they could only compromise. After thinking about it, Solemn said, Uncle Lucius, you have investigated me, so you must be aware that although my surname is Selwyn, but with my status in the family, I think I can't do anything about this matter, and I don't have any right to speak within the family. Looking at Lucius' gloomy face, Solemn went on to say, but it's not difficult to preserve the Malfoy family. Lucius looked at Solemn, waiting for him to speak. Draco must have told you about what happened at school last term, and that must be the reason for your uneasiness, uncle. You and I know very well, once that man comes back, Malfoy will definitely not be able to hide. Speaking, Solemn pointed to Lucius' left arm. Both of them knew what was there. He just wants to use Malfoy's contacts and money in the wizarding world to influence and control the Ministry of Magic. Then, when Malfoy is still valuable, if there is some small unhappiness between you, it can also be exposed. From this aspect, as long as the Malfoy family still has value to use, that person will not persecute you too much. Lucius nodded at Solemn's words. But, the same reason, as long as Malfoy is still useful, then you can't get rid of him. When you want to get rid of him and draw a clear line with him, Malfoy loses his use value. Uncle Lucius, you have been in contact with that person for a long time, and you must be much clearer than me about how he deals with people who are worthless. The current situation is not as good as before. Even if he does come back, as long as he doesn't want to start a war with the entire wizarding world of the UK as soon as he comes back, then he will definitely block the news of his return, and he will definitely need a foothold as a gathering place for Death Eaters. The base camp of the gangsters. Solemn looked at Lucius and said, Uncle, you might as well guess where he will choose this base camp. Lucius couldn't help showing a wry smile when he heard Solemn's words. Is there any need to guess? It must be our Malfoy Manor. It covers a large area and has many rooms. It is not a problem to cram 200 or 300 people here. Besides, where else would he choose if he didn't choose Malfoy Manor? Lestrange. Their family only had a small 3-story villa, which could accommodate a dozen people if they were exhausted. They're not as good as Lestrange. Caro. The two brothers and sisters are still wanted by the Ministry of Magic. Aurors have been chasing them. In this situation, they don't even have a decent residence, so naturally they can't be counted on. The same situation applies to Antonin Dolohov and others. These people are having a hard time being hunted by the Ministry of Magic. Avery complained about this at the last gathering. Working under the Dark Lord. But as Solemn said, when Voldemort really returns, he will definitely find a place to use as his base camp. And Malfoy Manor is the only choice. Under such circumstances, how could Malfoy refuse Voldemort's request? Not let Voldemort live in. That's easy to do, just kill Malfoy directly, and the manor will naturally belong to Voldemort. If Uncle really wants to draw a line with that person, then this manor must not be taken. Solemn said, as long as you are still the owner of this manor, then he will definitely come to you. And even if you want to sell this manor, it is not a manor, and it cannot be handed over to others casually, and the superficial work must be done well. After hearing Solemn's words, Lucius smiled wryly. He understood what Solemn said. Since the Dark Lord would most likely live in Malfoy Manor after his return, he should sell the manor before then, and the best thing to buy this manor is the kind that the Dark Lord would like, a feared family or organization. Only in this way can we ensure that the manor will not be ruined by the Dark Lord and his minions. However, this manor was the ancestral property of the Malfoy family, so Lucius would have sold it out. Just thinking about it would make him almost suffocate. Is there no other way? Lucius' cheeks trembled. To be honest, Malfoy won't be able to escape unless he is killed in a very short time after his return. I know what uncle you mean by looking for me, and I hope that I can connect Malfoy and Selwyn so that Malfoy is under Selwyn's protection. But, I think it would be a stupid decision even if it worked out. Solemn spread his hands. If things really turned out as Lucius expected, and Selwyn sheltered Malfoy, what would Voldemort think? Well, you Malfoy, your wings are stiff and you dare to change jobs. You don't even have to report your resignation. If you don't give it to me, do you want to leave the job directly? It's a beautiful idea. Go ahead and make your dream come true. He will definitely, absolutely kill all the Malfoys, even if he offends Selwyn for this. If Malfoy really escaped from Voldemort's control through this method, what would the rest of Voldemort's subordinates think? Oh, just find a big thick leg and hug me, and Voldemort will have nothing to do with me. You see, Malfoy is like this. I did it, and I'm still alive and well. Let's find a big Wong Lizao to hug me. Come on, except for those Death Eaters who were loyal to Voldemort, the other people who joined Voldemort's command by coercion and lure would definitely run away. Don't discuss whether these people have the ability to find big thick legs. So, in order to prevent this kind of thing from happening, he will definitely kill the Malfoy family as an example to others. Could it be that our Malfoys can really just watch this happen? Is there no way for us to escape this disaster? Lucius' expression was as calm as ever, but the hands with bulging veins still betrayed his heart. Uncle Lucius, Solemn smiled. I don't believe it. You ex-Death Eaters who survived, haven't you studied why that person didn't die completely? Solemn crossed his hands. You know, there are few ways to prevent unnatural deaths, but that doesn't mean there are none. After hearing Solemn's words, Lucius trembled his lips, and finally managed to utter a word that terrified him. Horcruxes. Glancing at Lucius with frightened eyes, Solemn nodded and said, That's right, it's a Horcrux. In fact, I know he made more than one Horcrux. Hearing that the Dark Lord had made multiple Horcruxes, Lucius finally couldn't hold back and collapsed on the armchair. Sure enough, the things he handed to himself were not the only ones. He also made an unknown number of them and put them in some unknown places. He really conquered death. Even if he failed again after returning this time and was killed again, as long as there are these unknown Horcruxes, the Dark Lord will not die completely, and the Malfoy family will not be able to completely get rid of him. The Malfoys are the tools of the Dark Lord. Lucius is very clear about this. If the tools are easy to use, continue to use them. The end is dangerous. Actually, Uncle Lucius, you don't need to be so desperate. Solemn said, his condition is still very bad now. Even if he wants to return to the wizarding world, it will take a few years at the earliest, and this time is enough to do something gone. I don't quite understand. Lucius settled his mood and sat up again. You are a Selwyn, these things have nothing to do with you, and he can't affect your Selwyn family. Why are you doing this to these things? Nodding, Solemn said that he understood what Lucius wanted to express, and responded, if it is to other people, I should answer like this. That devil destroyed the prosperity and stability of the wizarding world and hindered the development of the wizarding world. And construction, as an out-and-out native of the UK, I want to make my own contribution to the prosperity and stability of the wizarding community in the UK. But for you, Uncle Lucius, I think this answer may not satisfy you. Then let me put it another way. I like this feeling of participating in something familiar to me. Maybe you can't understand, Uncle, but things are like this. Spreading his hands, Solemn continued. Besides, his Horcrux is not without trace. After hearing Solemn's words, Lucius leaned forward slightly. In the last semester, I found one. I believe you must have heard of this thing, and that is the ring of the Gunter family. Resurrection Stone. The rings of the Gaunt family are famous, and there is no one in the Pure Blood family that doesn't know. That's right, it's the Resurrection Stone. He made that ring into a Horcrux. I handed him over to Headmaster Dumbledore. Although you may not agree with some of his actions, Uncle Lucius, you have to admit that it is the best great wizard you have come into contact with. The Malfoy family, or it should be said that Lucius Malfoy is very disgusted with Dumbledore. In fact, many pure blood families don't have a good impression of Dumbledore. There is no love for no reason in this world, and there is no hate for no reason. A large part of the antipathy towards Dumbledore from these pure blood families comes from profit. Not only do these families give a large amount of galleons to the Ministry of Magic every year, but the Malfoy family, which is one of the members of the Hogwarts School Board, also gives a large amount of galleons to Hogwarts every year. These two expenses are quite a lot, and these families usually turn a blind eye to Dumbledore's embezzlement of public funds. After all, no one wants to have any unpleasantness with a prestigious wizard over this kind of matter. Besides, how much can Dumbledore be greedy? That point of Garin is nothing to these pure-blood wizards who have a lot of property. In the past, they and Dumbledore got along quite happily, but since Dumbledore and Nicholas May jointly released the 12 Uses of Dragon's Blood, the relationship between pure-blood wizards and Dumbledore began to deteriorate. The dragon industry has always been an important source of income for pureblood families. Dumbledore's actions were harming the interests of pure-blood wizards. Although Dumbledore and Nicholas May announced the 12 Uses of Dragon Blood, the price of dragon materials, especially blood, has been rising all the way, but in the eyes of pure-blood wizards, these are completely justified. If Dumbledore doesn't publish that report and make this kind of thing known to everyone, the pure-blood family can completely monopolize this kind of knowledge and technology, which will bring them greater benefits. However, the conflict of interests between Dumbledore and the pure-blood family is only a matter of interest, and Dumbledore's status is very high, so they have only been stumbling each other all year round, which is relatively restrained. Especially Malfoy, they often make trouble for Dumbledore. In Solim's view, this is more like a show, more like a statement. You see, although we Malfoy are not like those relatives imprisoned in Azkaban, but we have not betrayed the Dark Lord, we have been causing trouble for the Dark Lord's rival. Malfoy hopes to use this method to reduce their punishment after the Dark Lord returns in the future. Uncle Lucius, you have a lot of contact with that person, so do you have any news about the Horcrux? Solim said these words slowly. As soon as these words came out, the struggling look in Lucius' eyes became more obvious. He doesn't know how to make a choice now. He can now be sure that the diary is a Horcrux of the Dark Lord, but he gave it to himself, which means that Malfoy CFAF still has a certain place in his heart as far as status is concerned. He still has a lot of trust in himself, so, if he finds that he has failed this trust after he returns, but Malfoy really wants to get rid of the Dark Lord's control over the Malfoy family, then this diary is something that must be dealt with. Lucius was caught in a dilemma for a while. It seems that you, Uncle Lucius, know something. Solim said softly. He failed at Hogwarts this time, and his servants are finished. No one will help him now. If someone really wants to, if you want to help him make a comeback, you have to go to him so early, and he has come back a long time ago, and the group of people who most want to go to him and have the ability to find him are all locked in Azkaban now. Uncle, why don't you? What's there to worry about? As Solim said, if anyone in the wizarding world really wanted to bring Voldemort back, Voldemort would have been back long ago. But during these 11 years, Voldemort hid alone in the Albanian jungle, and no one came to find him. If someone really wants to find him, there are still many clues. You see, Peter Pettigrew hid in the Weasleys' house for 11 years, and when he was exposed, he went straight to find Voldemort. So they Death Eaters, if they really wanted to find Voldemort, they would definitely find them. But the Death Eaters who wanted to find Voldemort were all locked up in Azkaban. Those who were still hiding outside, or escaped by chance, no one wanted to find him. They would rather live their lives nervous. He would rather run away to avoid the pursuit of the Aurors than return to Voldemort's command. I do know that there is such a thing, Lucius Wade, but will he feel it? There is a connection between the Horcrux and its owner. If it is destroyed, will he feel it? We'll know. If he really comes back, he might feel it, but he is just a wandering spirit now, a wandering spirit without a body. How does he feel? Solim continued to persuade. I understand your concerns, Uncle, but now is the time to make a choice. Either follow Voldemort and be slowly played to death by him, or die in the battle with the Order of the Phoenix, or while he is still weak, decisively weaken him, before he returns destroy all his Horcruxes in the past few years, and get rid of him once and for all when he comes back. Well, Lucius sighed, well, he handed me a diary once, and I think that's one of them. After speaking, he walked to the side bookcase and took out a black diary. Solim knew at a glance that it was the culprit who confused Ginny and released the basilisk. Taking the diary from Lucius' hand, he opened it and saw that it was blank, with nothing in it. It was like this when he handed it to me. There was not a word on it. Seeing Solim flipping through the diary, Lucius explained, I thought it would record some powerful black magic, but it was just a blank book. Satisfied with closing the diary, Solim knew that as long as he didn't write on it and didn't open his heart to the soul inside, this Horcrux wouldn't affect him. Keep this Horcrux. Solim stood up and said to Lucius with satisfaction, Uncle Lucius, if you want him to stop taking action against the Malfoy family, the best way is to let Malfoy become a contract family again. Of course, we all know that in this generation is basically hopeless. If you really want to save the Malfoy family, then it is better to explain some things clearly to Draco, so that he can be psychologically prepared. After all, become a contract. You are also aware of the conditions of the family. Draco's talent is not bad. Whether he can succeed in this generation depends on whether he works hard or not. Solemn and Cerna have vacated their room at the Leaky Cauldron, and they now live at Malfoy Manor. When Lucius learned that the two brothers and sisters of the Selwyn family lived in a place like the Leaky Cauldron, he immediately said, "We have nothing else in Malfoy Manor except that there are too many rooms." Without heavy samples. Unable to accept the hospitality, Solemn and Silna just stayed in Malfoy Manor. Anyway, they each have a suitcase, which is very convenient to pack. Now that he lived in Malfoy Manor, Draco's daily life began to be difficult. After talking to Solemn, Lucius had another in-depth conversation with Draco. It can be said that Lucius did not hide anything this time, and told his son everything about the current situation of the Malfoy family. Now Draco didn't want to play around anymore. He already knows now that the best way to get rid of the Dark Lord's control over the Malfoy family is to become a great wizard himself, and then become a contracted family of the Presbyterian Church again under the operation of his father. In this way, the Dark Lord will not. Maybe the Malfoy family could be moved. At that time, the Malfoy family was truly safe. At the same time, they also fulfilled the expectations of their ancestors. Malfoy once again stood at the top of the wizarding world. But if you want to become a great wizard, you can't do it just by thinking about it. Draco's vacation this time is even busier than when he was at school, and he is now spending every morning with Cierna. Except Solim's theoretical guidance. Solemn, who had studied at Skull for several years, taught them both more than enough. And the afternoon was the part that Draco was looking forward to and resisting, practical training. Solemn would sometimes teach him new spells, but after learning these spells, Solemn would test the results of his learning, and the best way was to test it in actual combat, for which Draco was often beaten. But since the price has been paid, it will naturally be rewarded. Draco's use of magic spells has become quite impressive now. Although compared with those adult wizards who are good at fighting, it is just a show, but for a boy who has just turned 12 years old, this is already very valuable. However, during this period of time, Malfoy Manor was not very peaceful. People from the Ministry of Magic came in and out several times, and every time someone from the Ministry of Magic came, Lucius' expression turned ugly. Apparently, Voldemort's presence at Hogwarts hadn't been hidden from the Ministry of Magic, or rather, the Auror department, who were obviously here to find Voldemort. The Aurors have never let up in their pursuit of Voldemort. It has been going on for 11 years. Not everyone is like the current Minister of Magic who scoffs at the news that Voldemort is still alive. That's all for the Aurors. Lucius can bear it. After all, from a certain point of view, Malfoy and the Aurors are now in the same trench. But when Lucius learned that Arthur Weasley had come to Malfoy Manor to carry out the so-called black magic item search, no one would doubt that if Weasley was in front of him now, he would definitely throw a slap in Weasley's face. A white glove. Lucius has been relatively busy during this time. In fact, Lucius has always been busy. Even though they don't have any serious jobs, they have a lot of property. Dragon Farm has shares, Gringotts has shares, Potion Store has shares, Out of the World Clothing Store has shares, and Profit Daily has shares. As long as they are involved, Malfoy has to deal with shareholders' affairs. Therefore, a successful wizard family must have a small number of people. Why can a family like Selwyn have several great wizards? It is because they have a clear division of labor and they also have industries. Those who manage these industries have special people in the family. However, Selwyn's direct descendants can explore the mysteries of magic with peace of mind, without being distracted by these mundane things. But there are only two people leading the Malfoy family, and one of them is a minor. Everything in and out of the family is on the shoulders of Lucius alone. It would be hell if he had the time to calm down and study magic. Lucius is not so much a wizard as he is a magician. A businessman and politician in wizard clothing. There is no way around this. If the influence of the Malfoy family in the wizarding world cannot be guaranteed, then it is empty talk to want to reproduce the glory of Malfoy. Lucius sacrificed himself in order to give Draco a good external and internal environment. If Draco can live up to his expectations, then the Malfoy family can still be saved. In mid-June, Solemn received a letter. The headmaster of Hogwarts was finally free, and he invited Suo and his maid to know. 19. Spider's End Lane. Spider's End Lane is a suburban street in Cokeworth, and the surrounding environment is very dirty. There is a big chimney in the town, indicating that there is at least one factory, and the streets are full of workers. Head of Solemn. Professor Snape's home is also here. When Solemn arrived at the destination, he saw a dirty river with overgrown weeds and rubbish on the banks. There is a tall and huge chimney left by the abandoned mill, which looks very eerie. Except for the murmur of the Black River, the surroundings are dead silent, and there is no sign of life. Only a skinny fox sneaks down the river bank, sniffing hopefully at a few pieces of leftover fried fish and chips in the grass strips of wrapping paper. Oh, it's really miserable. Solemn looked at the mess nearby and shook his head. As a potion master, Snape must have no shortage of gallon. In fact, no potions master would ever be short of money. If a potion master is willing to let go of his reserve and his bottom line, then he can become very rich. The treasured potion, the potion for saving people, or the poison for harming people, these are not big problems for them. But such a potion master lives in this kind of place. Snape could have afforded to move to a better place, but he didn't because this was where he met Lily. For those who are not familiar with this place, Spider's End Lane is a very easy place to get lost. The houses all look the same, they are all red brick houses, the only difference is the house number. Solemn can only count, row by row, but fortunately, the number 19 is not very big, so Solemn doesn't have to go deep into this depressing place. A mottled wooden door, the paint on it was almost peeled off, although it was extremely inconsistent with Snape's status as a master of potions, but this was indeed his home. Solemn dropped his hand that was about to knock on the door, it was already open. Come in. Dumbledore greeted Solemn cheerfully, as if this was his home. Once inside, Solemn began to look around. The only feeling Solemn feels about the small space here is that it is oppressive, which is aggravated by the furnishings and layout of the entire room. Solemn looked at Snape, who was sitting on the sofa, and at Dumbledore, who had just closed the door. So, can we begin? Solemn asked. Then what are you waiting for? Snape stood up abruptly. I'm locked in the basement, and the ring is with the headmaster, let's hurry down, don't dawdle. Looking at the obviously different Snape, who had become a bit talkative, Solemn looked at the smiling Dumbledore. Ah, Severus obviously can't hold it anymore, well, let's go together. Dumbledore said, and Solemn walked side by side to the basement behind Snape. I heard, Dumbledore said, looking at Solemn, that you and your sister lived at Malfoy Manor recently. Ah, yes, Headmaster, and I think you'll be delighted to know I've brought you this news. Solemn smiled at Dumbledore. Oh, I'd be interested what you learned from Malfoy then, Dumbledore said with interest. How about something similar to that ring? Would you be interested in this matter, Headmaster? Dumbledore's face became serious. Another Horcrux. In the Malfoy Manor. That's right, Uncle Lucius offered to give him to me. Of course, I think it's better for us to discuss this matter after dealing with Professor Snape. You surprised me again, Solemn. Dumbledore was much taller than Solemn, and he couldn't see Dumbledore's expression now. This is the second one. Dumbledore sighed, who knows how many more he made and where he hid them. It can be investigated clearly for me. Solemn said heartlessly. Bai Huang can be said to be the person who knows him best. Except me, of course. The basement of Snape's house looked much wider than the top, but only in relative terms. Especially the iron cage placed in the corner made this place look no wider than the top. The cage holds 5 comatose people, all of whom share common traits: muggles, grown males, criminals, and all on death row. It seemed that Snape had done more or less research when he was picking a model. What's next? Snape opened the cage, ready to get out the sleeping people inside. Solemn looked at Dumbledore. Principal, have you read the things I gave you before the holidays? Leave it to me, Severus, Dumbledore said calmly. Before the holiday, Solemn gave Dumbledore the correct way to use the resurrection stone and how to summon the souls of the dead. Trust Dumbledore to be ready, both mentally and materially. Snape frowned. watching Dumbledore take out various things from the bag on his body. Solemn noticed it, and explained, 557, Professor, this ceremony is not only enough for the soul and the resurrection stone, but also requires other materials. Of course, you know, I am a poor ghost, these many of the materials are contraband, and only the principal has the means to get them all into the box. Snape nodded, sort of accepting Solemn's explanation. Don't look at Snape as a potion master, but there are some things he really can't get his hands on. The materials used in the ceremony are not only potion materials, but also some rare alchemy materials, and only a great wizard like Dumbledore who enjoys a high reputation and has a large number of connections can collect all these things. When Dumbledore was ready, Snape took out the resurrection stone. Professor, next, you have to listen carefully to every word I say, because in the following process there must be absolutely no mistakes. Solemn said to Snape seriously. The garment of the soul is the body, but the garment of consciousness is the soul. A soul without consciousness is like a body without a soul. Only when consciousness, soul, and body are complete can a person be complete. Just like the death curse, it completely destroys a person's soul. Even if the person's body and consciousness are still intact, but without the soul, the person is considered dead. Because it is the soul that connects the consciousness and the body without the control of consciousness is a pile of dead flesh. Solemn said that this ceremony is called a spiritual ceremony, which is not accurate. But that's what it says on the phone. It doesn't matter what the name of the ceremony is, the key is its function. With the soul as fuel, supplemented by various materials, what is truly summoned through the resurrection stone is not the soul, but the residual consciousness of the dead. Because the soul has no way to communicate, only the consciousness can communicate. But once a person dies, whether because the body is destroyed or the soul is destroyed, the consciousness will be affected and fall into a deep sleep, just like sleeping. But it is not an ordinary deep sleep, this should be called eternal sleep. Just like waking up a sleeping person, external stimulation is needed to wake up from sleep. This is especially true for the already silent consciousness. But these silent consciousness are like a person who has not closed his eyes for 3 days and 3 nights and can fall asleep even standing up. If such a person wants to stay awake, he needs external stimulation. These souls prepared by Snape are what is used to do this. By burning these souls, is to keep the awakened consciousness alive so that it can communicate. While dealing with these souls, while maintaining communication with the summoned consciousness, these things can only be done by one person. And the act of burning the soul cannot be interrupted, otherwise the summoned consciousness will immediately fall into a deep sleep. And it is not so easy to wake up again. So, Professor, this is your only chance. Solemn said. Consciousness is different from the body and soul. It is invisible, but you who hold the resurrection stone can feel it. I will be with the principal later. I will leave and leave you here alone. The principal must have explained the various precautions for this ceremony to you, so we will not disturb you. Good luck. After speaking, Solemn glanced at the hesitant Dumbledore, turned around and was about to go to the living room. What was going on in Dumbledore's mind, Solemn thought he could guess a little. Ariana, Dumbledore's eternal pain. Would he want to take this opportunity to apologize to his sister? But even if Dumbledore wanted to do this, it would have to be left behind by Snape. Maybe Dumbledore had prepared too many materials, but Solemn didn't believe that Dumbledore would murdering the soul of a Muggle in order to apologize to his sister, even if the Muggle is a death row prisoner. Dumbledore might not be a good guy at all, but after his repentance, his moral standards were terribly simple. Solemn went back to the living room, took out the diary after sitting down and put it on the coffee table. He was waiting for Dumbledore. He could use this time to talk to Dumbledore about the diary. To be honest, Solemn himself was not sure whether he should dig out all of Voldemort's Horcruxes, and when Solemn was weighing the pros and cons, Dumbledore sat across from him. Dumbledore didn't look at Solemn, but stared at the diary on the coffee table. Principal, this Horcrux is a bit different. Solemn said, it is a conscious Horcrux. Among all Voldemort's Horcruxes, apart from Nagini and Harry, who were originally life, this diary was the most special. Other Horcruxes only seal part of Voldemort's soul, but this diary not only contains the soul, but also part of Voldemort's memory. It is because of this part of memory that this Horcrux is more active than other Horcruxes. It is much taller. It can be said to be a Horcrux with its own will. It will take the initiative to confuse others, and it still has all the memories of Voldemort's student days, including the recognition of various magic. No. Solemn picked up his pen, ready to show Dumbledore how different this Horcrux was. Hello, Dark Lord. Solemn wrote the words. There is no response from the diary. Solemn smiled at Dumbledore without saying anything. Your headmaster is looking at you. Don't you think it's impolite for you to ignore me like this? After writing this sentence, Solemn went on to write, also, don't really think that I can't destroy you, sir. Come out honestly. After writing this, Solemn took out his wand with his left hand and flicked it lightly on his right wrist. Then dripped blood on the diary. Compared with the method of absorbing Ginny's vitality, Solemn's current method is more direct. The vitality in fresh human blood is what this diary longs for, which will make it stronger. After stopping the wound, Solemn said to the diary, come on, don't hide. Come out and say hello to your professor. As soon as the words fell, a black air drifted out from the diary, and gradually formed a human shape, but it was a little transparent, and the scene behind him could be seen through him. Hello, Professor. Voldemort said very politely when he was a student. Of course, and you. Glancing at Solemn, Riddle, he is not exactly Voldemort. Looking at Solemn with a scrutiny. Hello, Tom. Dumbledore said, I really didn't think that we would meet in this situation. This is just the memory of my 16-year-old 3.0. It can't be regarded as a complete person. Riddle is now acting very honestly. He stripped me roughly, and then roughly stuffed me into this broken book. Then I was forced to stay in this diary for an unknown number of years, and I was not released until today. Getting sympathy. It won't work for us, Mr. Riddle. Solemn crossed his legs. The two people sitting here know you well, so put away this set, let's do the trick. And I don't have much blood dripping on the diary. Don't waste this hard-won opportunity. I won't do it again. Solemn finished speaking to Riddle, looking at Dumbledore opposite. Then I'll ask directly, Tom, you made this Horcrux, or he made it when he was 16 years old, so, how many did he plan to make at that time? You should ask him about this. I'm just a 16-year-old memory he kept in his diary. He didn't have such thoughts at the time, at least I didn't know. Riddle was expressionless. Riddle still didn't confide anything until the vitality provided by Solemn's blood was exhausted. But none of that mattered to Solemn. He already knew what he should know. This time it was just for show, and to see what Dumbledore wanted to do with the diary. Dumbledore was silent for a while, as if thinking about something. Solemn, you got this diary from Malfoy Manor. Did Lucius tell you anything? Dumbledore asked. He said that this diary was specially given to Voldemort when he came to the manor alone. Obviously, with that person's temperament, if he only made one Horcrux, then he would only hide it in a place he knew place, but since he can give the Malfoys one, he must have made several. Solemn then added, honestly, I don't believe Voldemort can't see that Malfoy is not loyal to him. The Death Eaters who were loyal to him are all in Azkaban now. You mean, since Malfoy can have one, those Death Eaters who are more loyal to Voldemort may also have his Horcruxes? Dumbledore heard what Solemn wanted to express. That's very possible. So, Principal, what are you going to do with this diary? Solemn asked. This diary was made when he was underage, so it must be much easier to destroy. Dumbledore obviously had his own thoughts on the diary. He put away the diary directly, and said to Solemn, let me deal with the matter of the diary. I have some other ideas about it, maybe there will be some in school next semester. Funny things happen. Dumbledore gave Solemn a thoughtful look. Huh. Solemn was stunned for a moment when he heard Dumbledore's words. In his original plan, he planned to do the same as in the original book. Let the diary enter Hogwarts, then let him open the secret room, wake up the basilisk, so that he can follow behind to detect leaks. But because of the discovery of Cerna's Parseltongue talent, Solemn changed his plan. Since Cerna can speak Parseltongue, the diary will no longer be useful. Then the safer way is to bring your younger sister, or ask your younger sister to teach me a few words of snake language, and go down to get rid of the snake monster by yourself, so that nothing will happen to the school this year. But what Dumbledore said seemed to mean that he was going to do something with this diary. After going through it carefully in his mind, Dumbledore was only the professor of transfiguration during the Myrtle incident, but he must have suspected Riddle, and this diary contains Riddle's memory when he was 16 years old. Moreover, there is no saying in the wizarding world that dead people can keep secrets. It is true that Myrtle is dead, but her ghost still stays at Hogwarts. Solemn has reason to believe that Dumbledore already knows the ins and outs of what happened back then what he wants to do with this diary is almost ready to come out. Principal. Solim's expression was as if he was constipated. In his opinion, everything on the basilisk should belong to him. Do you want to open the secret room next semester? Solemn asked cautiously this sentence, while carefully paying attention to Dumbledore's face. But obviously, as long as someone like Dumbledore doesn't want to, you won't see anything from his face. I never thought of you as an 11-year-old, Solemn. Dumbledore said, but I have to say, sometimes you know more than even the professors at Hogwarts know. Solemn understood that Dumbledore wanted to hear his own explanation. When Voldemort was in school, someone died in the school, and poor Miss Warren is still crying in that women's bathroom. It's not something unknown, Professor. Solemn put his legs down and continued. As for the rumors of a secret room in Hogwarts, hee. There are many chambers of secrets in Hogwarts, but when people in the know discuss chambers of secrets, they usually talk about the chamber of secrets left by Slytherin. The time 70 years ago was not the only time it was opened once in the 13th century, and it was also opened in the 15th century. Only someone like Voldemort, completely ignorant of past history, would believe that the Chamber of Secrets was used to rid the school of Muggles. Quote. After hearing Solim's words, Dumbledore asked with interest, "It seems that you know that secret room very well. As the headmaster, I only know that such a secret room exists, but you actually know that it has been opened twice." Hogwarts was attacked both times. Hogwarts was established in 993. After a few years, Slytherin left. The secret room he left was used to defend the school. Solemn explained, "Principal, you also know that the defensive statues in the school are all disposable, and if they break, they will be broken. In that chaotic era, every generation of principals had a headache to replenish the statues. Salazar Slytherin in the secret room a creature is placed. When the school is attacked violently and most of the defense measures are destroyed, the creature in this secret room will be released to kill the enemy in the dark through the pipe buried in the Hogwarts castle, to defend the school. It is not used to eliminate Muggles in the school. With the pride of Slytherin, he may not trust Muggles, and may despise them, but as long as he comes to Hogwarts and becomes a student of Hogwarts, he will treat everyone equally, and during the years he was still at school, there was not a single incident of attacking a Muggle student. The rumors about the Chamber of Secrets are all nonsense for later generations." Dumbledore frowned at Solim's words. "So, do you know what creature is in that chamber?" "Let me go first, Headmaster." Solemn hurriedly vaccinated Dumbledore. "The things in there are mine. It doesn't matter if they are alive or dead. Seeing how much I have helped you, treat it as if it were for me, thank you." Seeing Solim's anxious look, Dumbledore smiled. "It seems that you are nervous about that creature. What kind of creature is there? You know in your heart, Headmaster, right? After Myrtle became a ghost, I don't believe you didn't ask her what caused her death." Dumbledore likes this. Pretend to be confused. Suddenly Dumbledore's expression changed, and he said to Solemn, "Okay, let's do this first. I will arrange things for next semester. Harry really wants to grow up as soon as possible, while there is still time." Dumbledore stood up. "Severus is over. 390, let's go and see." Solemn wasn't in the slightest surprised that Dumbledore could sense what was going on down there. After all, he is a great wizard, and his perception of magic power far exceeds that of ordinary people. Solemn and Dumbledore headed down to the basement. "Principal, is there a way to preserve the function of the resurrection stone while destroying the Horcrux?" "I'm afraid not," Dumbledore said regretfully. "The death curse is deeply related to this Horcrux. If the curse is intact, it may be possible to trigger the curse and destroy the Horcrux at the same time. But when the curse was lifted by Elrond, the soul in that Horcrux had no connection with the outside world. It can only be destroyed through external destruction, and this Horcrux can be destroyed. Very ingenious design. I have no way to destroy the Horcruxes under such circumstances while retaining the function of the resurrection stone. It was also because the curse was broken that the soul inside could not affect the outside world, so Severus was able to use the resurrection stone normally. After hearing Dumbledore's explanation, Solemn was a little dumbfounded. Originally, under Dumbledore's self-sacrifice, the resurrection stone not only destroyed the Horcrux, but also retained the function of the resurrection stone, but because Elrond lifted the curse on it in advance, the soul in the Horcrux and the only channel to the outside world is gone, which makes it impossible for Voldemort's soul inside to affect the outside world, but the outside world can no longer destroy it except by using violent means. This means that one day in the future, the resurrection stone will be destroyed, and one of the Deathly Hallows will disappear from this world forever. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and support our channel.